I normally do every week. I am requesting that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off or in a mute position as not to disturb the meeting. Any member of the public also has a right to make an audio or video recording of an open session of a public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. Okay, we have one person to just notify. From now on, the notification must be made before we start the meeting, so I can announce it at this. So, Mr. Whitehouse, yeah, he has been notified. Okay, well, Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman, 3 selectmen are present. Mrs. Begley, Mr. Holmes, and the Chairman Cruz. The Town Administrator, Mr. Andrews, is also present.
Carol Winslow will be late. She'll be here.
When she gets here, I will update.
Right. Thank you. Any announcement, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, I only received, and I didn't print it out. I won't be announcing the movies, but we will be looking for volunteers come the first of the year. We have the September 11th Remembrance, which is turning out to be quite an event. It's going to be at the Onset, down in Onset at the band shell, I believe. I believe it starts at 6 p.m. Mr. Andrews, do you have a copy of one of those invites in your packet? I do. I just read the one to the senator. And I wanted to get the Admiral's name as well. It's in front of the Admiral's name? Okay. And Admiral Gurnan, who is the administrator at Mass Maritime, will be a guest speaker. And again, I believe it starts at 6 p.m. It's down in Onset. There'll be a parade. There'll be some speaking. There'll be a speaking portion of the engagement. And it's a real important time, so please come. And thank you. Here it is, right here. I apologize. It starts at 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. We will have, obviously, many members of the Board of Selectmen. We've invited all of the town officials to come. And it'll be a real touching experience for those of you. You know, this will be the 10th anniversary now, September 11th. So, and after seeing people scurry about in New York today, it just really brings it back home that this is a very special anniversary. Also, just a reminder that the Mary Jane Pillsbury Cruise is coming up as well. For it's the 2nd annual cruise, and the family is begun a scholarship fund. This year the cruise will be for 3 hours instead of 2. So bring some Dramamine if you get sick on the boat. And again, I believe that begins at 6 as well at the Onset Pier. They'll be going out on the Viking. Tickets are $30. What else do we have? Do you have anything? Mr. Cruz, do you have any?
No, I don't.
Mr. Andrews? Kara, do you have any? Kara Winslow is present, Mr. Chair.
Yes, so noted.
And Kara, do you have any announcements? We did the remembrance and the cruise.
Friday night, the Joshua Tree.
Oh, that's right. That's this Friday night?
Yes.
$10?
Tickets, $10, I believe, at Piper Bowes. The Joshua Tree, which is a remembrance of Haley.
Right.
To benefit the Peace
YouTube
family.
band, I believe. Tribute band. And that's all we have for announcements tonight, Mr. Chair.
Oh, one more. There's a Family Fun Day in Onset on Saturday. There's a Facebook website for it. That's to benefit Lily, another little girl from the local area.
Thank you very much. citizen participation. Have hands. We'll go from the front and work back.
Yeah, my name's Gerald Barrows. I only have one little question to ask. I would like to, last time you had a meeting, I couldn't make it and I was at home watching it. And every time you move your hand, you knock your mic off. So I would please request you don't knock your mic off.
Okay, Mr. Barrows, what I do is I shut it off and I turn it on. I eventually
No.
probably forgot to turn
Yeah,
it
but
back
when
on.
when you shut it off, you can't hear you
Right, thank you for reminding me.
at home.
Thank you. Okay. Address yourself when you come up.
My name's Dave Willis. I was here about a month ago, following up on a request to be replaced on the Selectmen's agenda. At that time, Mr. Cruz, you promised me 30 minutes in front of the board. And since then, the original request was on June 28th. I walked into the Selectmen's office. When I got no response, I came about a month ago and asked the board, and we talked about what we want to talk about, and I know Mr. Andrews and the board is well aware. It's all about trash and trash collection and barrels and roadkill collection and so forth. I'm just following up to see when we can be replaced or placed on the agenda to move this forward.
Okay, as I told you at the last meeting, we were going to look at it. You asked for 30 minutes, and I said, I don't think I can do 30 minutes because, we have a long agenda. And we did advise you to go to the workshops that they have or the staff meeting on Wednesdays. I was there at one of them, and you were there. I didn't go to any, and I'm going to be at the next one tomorrow. It would be advantageous for you to work with the department heads and see how it goes.
I appreciate that, sir.
Yes.
And the board, but it's not the arena to make the changes we need to make. We need to make long-term positive changes, and we need to reform trash collection. We need to reform animal control to get full-time removal of, roadkill, skunks, foxes, and so forth off the road. And at a 10 a.m. meeting and, with the team leaders, I appreciate that, and I will definitely stay connected with the team, but it's not the forum to make the changes, to get barrel covers, to get an extra maintenance man, to make those changes. Aren't they in front of you people, the lawmakers, town meeting? Because if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
And I appreciate your comment, and I take reference to that. Arena is not arena. It's a meeting where the staff leaders are together so they can discuss what's going on in town and how to rectify it. I invited you to that meeting.
Right.
It should be a positive meeting. I think I missed one of those meetings. I will be at the next one. If you have any concerns, because I want to monitor myself. I was at one and you came late, and we talked later. So we need to work to this as a team. Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you to the members, I've gotten some calls on this trash business. I live in Onset. And I do agree with you that, the arena, if we want to call it that, for fixing some of this stuff, there's really day-to-day activities of the town. But, having said that, there is a lot of interest in this from the citizens, and I was thinking that since after Labor Day, right, we're going to go back to our regular 4 weeks every Tuesday night, right?
Starting on the 6th.
On the 6th. So I was thinking that maybe, I really think the public would benefit from seeing that presentation of the, what was it, 10 years of trash or 5 years
Thank
of trash?
you, sir. It's not just
I don't mean to.
it's not just me though.
Excuse me.
And,
Excuse me. He has the floor.
I understand.
Okay,
and
thank
so,
you.
Mr. Chairman, if it's possible, I'd like even 20 minutes just to see the presentation and let the public see it. And maybe we could do that here once we get back to a full.
Right. Well,
schedule.
that is a good suggestion. I would prefer if you came to the meetings with the staff, because we have all the players We have the chief of police, the maintenance department, board of health, whatever we need to do to try to work it together. And then we will work out a time for you to come. Now, to give you the full half hour, Mr. Holmes said 20 minutes. If we can cut it to 15, that would be sufficient. Other than that, I would prefer for you to come to the meeting so we can see what's going on. And other selectmen are invited to those meetings, even though it's a staff meeting, to be present. I try to go to most of them just to make sure that I see what's going on in the town. Thank you very much.
Again, sir, I appreciate what you're saying, but that is not the arena or the vehicle to make the changes we need. Is that somewhere where we can vote on a budget and get more money for maintenance to get covers and new barrels and another maintenance man? Or is the town meeting that arena? It's not the leadership team. It's town meeting where we can vote and get line item on the budget to get new barrel covers, new barrels, find out what kind of money the town has, doesn't have, so we can investigate other avenues like privatization, private investors, state and federal funding. So I appreciate staying connected with the leaders, but I don't believe that the team leadership meeting is a meeting that is going to result in the changes required. We need an extra maintenance man. We need full-time animal control. We need to reform maintenance in a way that trash gets collected in the afternoon, not the next day after the birds and the skunks have had their way with it. So this is reform. And if you think this reform can happen at a 10 a.m. meeting in the cafeteria of the town hall, by all means. But I don't believe that's the way we're going to make these changes.
Okay, Mr. Willis, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That is a start. We have to start somewhere, and I think that'll appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow at that meeting. Thank you very much. At the back of the room with the hands up.
Could I appeal to Kara Winslow? Last time I was here...
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Sandy Slavin. I'm here for Community Preservation. I have to get the right committee. Community Preservation Committee. Stuart Saginaw, who's the director of the Coalition for Community Preservation, is coming to town tomorrow evening at 6:30 at the auditorium to answer any questions people might have regarding Community Preservation Fund and how it can be used. It's available. We're opening it to the public from 6:30 to 7:30. We invited all the town boards, committees, memberships, team player, you know, the committees in town and the departments in town. So just put it out there if anybody would like to come from 6:30 to 7:30. Stuart be there to answer any and all questions regarding how CPA funds can and might be used, because there have been changes in the last couple years, and we'd like people to be aware of it, so maybe new projects can be brought before CPC. 6:30 tomorrow, auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Slavin. Yep.
Yeah, she's here.
Hello, my name is Paul Boulier. I've lived in the town for 63 years, so I've been around, and I am going to go back to the litter and the animal control. It really is important. We have over 600 people in the town that feel it is very important. I think seeing skunks, possums on the road that stay there for over a week, 2 weeks, there's no need for it. They can be picked up quickly. So things can be done to make changes. I hope this meeting that you mentioned will come about. My wife walks 5 miles a day picking up rubbish, just about every day. She takes Sunday off. I sometimes join her, but I get too tired. And it's very frustrating. You know, some of the times you stop at a barrel where good people in this town have put the rubbish in the barrel, but the seagulls have taken it all out. And you got to stop at that barrel and spend 5-10 minutes picking up around the barrel, putting it back in the barrel. The other thing I'm aware of is sometimes trash in some of the containers do not go in the container. They fall along the side, and the wooden structures around the barrels don't open up. So if you want to pick up the trash that didn't quite get in the barrel, you got to stick your whole body down into the thing to try and get it out. So we need to, things need to be changed in the way in which I'd like to see Mr. Gifford get some help. When I was a kid, I worked for the maintenance department. There was a bunch of us. I guess the money isn't available anymore, or the town hasn't chosen to allocate money towards maintenance. They may not have realized the problem that we have. And there is, I think, a big problem. And I do want to stop before I leave, because I know you've already heard Mr. Willis, and I know you don't want to hear any more of this. There's other people here. But I do want to say that there's a lot of people in town who are picking up rubbish. And I do want to say that when my wife goes out and picks up rubbish, we've noticed on some of the streets that she travels that now people on those streets are starting to clean up. I do think, like I said, many people would like to see something done, and I think if we move in that direction, it will be good. When a town is filthy, people don't think very much about just throwing another piece of paper on the floor or a nip bottle. A lot of nip bottles in this town. You know, I hope that some results will come with that meeting, Mr. Cruz, that you're going to. Let those managers know that there are 600 people behind them to take positive action towards trying to clean up the town. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and you said the correct thing. We need a positive action, and we need to start with a dialogue with the town officials. And that's the correct way to go. We have to be positive, and we will make it work. And the people of the town, we do need to take more responsibility for our town. This is a beautiful town, so let's not, you know, put it to waste. I think we have one more.
Mr. Chair, can I just comment on the speakers who are talking about litter? The issue of the litter in our streets is not just about the beautification of our community. As rainstorms come in and the litter moves, it becomes a real danger to wildlife, especially the birds. And it also gets into our water streams. I know I live on a pond, and every spring as the snow melts, you can see all the trash that flowed down the hill into the pond. It washes up on my yard. It's disgusting, and I'm not even going to tell you some of the things that wash up on my yard. But there's a number of fish and other water species that wash up dead on my yard because they've eaten a wrapper or gotten into one of those broken pieces of glass. So we have to concern ourselves with the environmental piece of this also. And I would be willing to bet that there's some grant money out there for trash barrel covers, especially the seagulls. I know I was at the beach last week and I had an unopened bag of rice cakes, and that seagull just ripped that bag right open. They're hungry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So perhaps we could have take a look into what type of grant money is available through. I know Massachusetts has a green department now for just these types of things, and at least get the trash barrels covered so when the litter gets in them, it doesn't get back out, and that will solve a portion of the problem.
Thank you. That's a good idea, and see, that's a start. Since she looked like she wants to volunteer for committee, if we come up with a plan, come to the meeting tomorrow, and if she would come to the meeting tomorrow, like I said, it's on every Wednesday, and your selectmen invited to come. No, it's a staff meeting. All the staff members will be the leadership meeting. All so no, it's not a trash meeting.
I won't be there tomorrow.
It may turn out to be that way, but anyway, citizen participation. One more.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. I have Tangled Kate. Two questions. Could you please give us a status? Sorry. Can you hear me now? Could you please give us a status update on Mr. Schneider and his whereabouts?
First of all, why do we need a status on Mr. Snyder to begin with? And what are you talking about, a status on Mr. Snyder? He isn't here today.
He hasn't been here for 3 weeks. He's left town.
Well, I'm not aware of what are you talking about. I know he's missed two meetings, and that's as much as I have to comment on that. Until I
Okay.
hear something from Mr. Snyder, I have no comment.
And our procurement officer here in Wareham, our accountant, and our town administrator are all the same person, right? Funding is moving from one department to the next, and no one knows. Mr. Andrews is not saying. Do you think this is right? I know the Department of Revenue is looking at it. They're concerned. Do you have any comment?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Wait, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
I have no comment on that, and any of the board has. If not, Mr. Andrews.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if the gentleman wants to be more specific and stop by my office, I'm happy to provide him with whatever information that he is looking at. I'm not sure I understand the question totally, but I have open office hours on Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. You're more than welcome to stop by or make an appointment to see me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have no separation of function here, no separation of duty. One person holding 3 jobs, it's illegal.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I could just mention that I believe that the town administrator is the chief procurement officer, and I believe that we have an assistant accountant right now. Is that true?
That's
In that job? And there's a job description out right now. We have an RFP out for an accountant. Is that correct?
Bid is out for Friday afternoon. Just trying to understand that.
That ends the citizen participation. Discussion for Westfield.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the board and the listening audience, we have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with the Westfield Committee. I've been working with Chairman Heaney to set this meeting up to look at possibilities for extension of the RFP bid process. We had one bidder come to our pre-bid conference after sending out 100 emails and posting it on the state's central register. I know it's going to be coming up in a little bit, but I'm working with Peter Sanborn from our Community and Economic Development Authority to look at ways to encourage bidders in the process and perhaps even hold a workshop that would better describe the project to individuals that would be interested or firms that would be interested in that. So I'm looking forward to our meeting with the Westfield Committee tomorrow evening at 5:30, and I'll keep the board updated on progress relative to what their recommendations would be to the body.
Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I got that email the other day. I was confused by the email, and I'm confused by the explanation. The Westfield Study Committee was put together to assist this board. This board is the group that's responsible for Westfield, not the Westfield Study Committee. They were put together to assist this board and make recommendations to this board in terms of the RFP. And then, as you recall, we extended their time frame so that they would also participate in the review of the RFPs as they came back. And we did have a little delay in the process, and I think 4 weeks ago, we extended, the chairman came in, Bill Haney, and we extended the board's term. What I'm hearing from the town administrator is not a function of the Westfield Study Committee, but a function of the Board of Selectmen. If we're going to extend that RFP period, that's this board's responsibility, not theirs. I was confused by the email, and I'm still confused as to why you need a vote of the Westfield Study Committee.
Well, we don't need a vote, Mr. Holmes.
But that's what he said.
All we want to do was to inform the committee, because we had time frames set up, and like town administrator, there was only one. There was quite a few of us at that meeting. Planning board and Dave Fischette and the whole bit. We all went out to the site. We only had one person there. So now, with the deadline set, we would have never made it with what we had for us. So the consensus was, go back to Mr. Haney, the chairman, bring it back to them. Are we going to stick with that or not? And like you said, it's our responsibility.
Right.
But we gave them a study committee, and they had a study to report back to us for us to agree it. Now, we did agree with one set of rules and regulations for the date. Now, do we want to extend it, and what's the extent date?
Right. So I guess the question through you, Mr. Chair, to
Yes.
Mr. Andrews is, what date do you need, Mark?
We're looking at November 10th. We're looking at a 68-day window, notwithstanding that holiday.
Okay, I make a motion to the Board of Selectmen, extend the RFP deadline to November 1st?
10th.
What'd you say?
November 10th.
10th.
November 10th, 2011. Does that work?
It does from what, yes.
Made in second, Jim.
I second.
Second.
Mr. Chair,
Now, that was November 10th.
November 10th?
Yes.
Yes. 2011.
Mr. Chair,
Motion made. Second.
Mr.
For
Chair.
discussion.
Yes.
Excuse me. On the meeting, raise your hand, and just because you say Mr. Chair does not mean that we continue speaking. Wait until we've been recognized, because we've been having that a lot lately. Thank you. Mrs. Winslow?
So we're extending the date because only one person showed up to the walkthrough?
For the walkthrough and for the response that we got, I think there was only one. And for the majority of the people that was on that site visit, it was recommended, even by the one fellow that was there, because of the holiday and everything else, and Mr. Sanborn, the director, was also there, that would be advantageous to us to extend it so we can get a better response. Motion made, second, no more discussion. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
All opposed?
No.
3.
3?
Did you vote yes, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
1.
0. Town council update?
Mr.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. We're still under Westfield. And given that being the case, I make a motion that we extend the terms of all members on the Westfield Study Committee through December 31st, 2011.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion second. By Alden. Motion made and second for discussion. No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
310. 3.
3 yes.
3.
Ms. Begley?
Yes.
310.
Is that it for Westfield?
One more second. I gotta make sure there was something else I thought. I got the permits. No, I guess that's it, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I have anything else on Westfield.
Okay, if you do, Mr. Holmes, maybe at other town business, if you want to refresh your memory on that, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Town council update?
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
State your name and...
State my name, raise my right hand.
We all know, but go ahead. Be consistent. Thank you.
Rich Bowen of Blattman, Bobrowski and Mead, Town Council.
You gonna read the newspaper to us?
I thought about it, but no, I'm not going to do that. Would you like me to begin, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I think it says town council update, and we need an update. I don't, I'm looking at you, same concern that Mr. Holmes had. I see you flipping the paper. Is your update on the piece of paper, or?
No,
Mr.
I just
Chairman.
wanted to get to a couple points that were in the newspaper.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Chairman, is this my agenda item that I asked to be put on here?
Yes.
It says town council update.
Or is this the same thing I asked to have put on the
It probably
agenda?
is, because the same thing like you asked for
Okay.
Westfield, we've been putting Westfield, you asked for town council, and we're putting town council on it.
Okay.
Does it make any difference on?
Well, no, it does. If it's my agenda item, then I'd like to begin,
Okay.
if that's okay with you.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Mr. Holmes.
Mrs. Winslow had her hand up,
Mr. Holmes, you have the floor.
but she had her hand up.
Maybe I need a
could
bell.
concede the floor to,
No,
you are. Are you
Okay.
conceding the floor?
no,
Mrs. Winslow?
This is the item that Mr. Holmes had asked for last week.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes?
Good evening, Rich. I know you've had, I was so shocked to see you. I know you've had a couple of bad weeks, and know that your mom is in our prayers, and as is your dad and your family.
I appreciate it, thank you.
I raised some concerns, and I've had some concerns, as you know. You and I have talked many times about this since March. And your firm came in. There were 3 gentlemen that night. I believe Jay was with you, and a gentleman named Mark, and there may have even been a 4th person with you. And your firm clearly was more money than the other firms that were bidding for the town council's job. But I supported that theory because you had great knowledge of the town of Wareham through your previous employer at Copeland & Page. Mr. J had written the book on zoning issues, as I recall. Mark pretty much wrote the book on small towns, working in Walmart litigation. You've done a lot of work. Oh, they had done a lot of work up in the Plymouth area and up in those surrounding towns, dealing with cranberry bogs and land and all that other kind of stuff, right? So, in my mind, in March or February, whatever that deadline was, I thought this was a perfect fit, where if we had a zoning issue, Jake, he wrote the book, he could deal with it. Your firm would be heavily involved with Walmart in all of that whole saga that goes on with Walmart. I know there was a question about employment or employee litigation, whatever you classify that as, because I think at the time they were still planning to use Copeland & Page and that gentleman who was here that night, right? And then Copeland & Page said, we're not going to do that because we didn't get selected. Well, you got to kind of figure things like that happen. So putting the employee thing aside, because I don't think that's fair, I got to tell you, we've had some serious zoning issues in this town since we hired you. We've had employment issues, not litigation against the town, but employment type issues that we've been told town council is investigating that. Town council is looking into that. One of the big zoning issues we had recently, same story, town council's looking into that. So we feel, or this selectman feels, I don't need to worry about that. Rich is on it, or Jay is on it, or Mark is on it, or someone from the firm is on it, because this is an all-inclusive deal where we have an opportunity to save money in our legal accounts by using your firm. And unfortunately, the way this selectman sees it, you didn't know about it. You weren't informed about it. One night you were informed, I think the Thursday before you showed up, on something that had been going on for over a month. And it's very disappointing to me. We also talked about, having you here as part of that agreement. Was that you said that you would come and attend our meetings. We've had some questions, I recall, over a tabled matter not too long ago, where it would have been nice to have you sitting here to give us that advice. And I know that was part of the deal. I've even suggested to you and joked somewhat that, I think that a town council, with the arrangement that this town has, or this Board of Selectmen has with your firm, to be an all-inclusive firm, man, I'll give you an office on the 2nd floor of Town Hall, and you can work there. And if a department head needs something, or Mr. Andrews needs something, or a member of this board needs something, you're here. I mean, obviously you can come and go as you please, and you can do other things while you're there. But that's the impression that I had, and you and I have talked about this. I'm not talking out of school here. You and I have talked about this. And that's the impression I had when I favored your firm being hired. Now, I understand that, and you can address these yourself, obviously, but, you know, I understand that you now may be involved in Walmart as recently as maybe 2 weeks ago. But this has been going on for months. And so my point of this conversation tonight is bringing you in, not bringing you in, having you come in and having a discussion about how do we work together better. What can this Board of Selectmen do? Because we do hire town council. And what can we do to make this relationship better, Rich, and to move it forward? Because really, I had all this expectation, and quite frankly, I haven't seen it come to fruition. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, but that's basically what I wanted Mr. Bowen to come in tonight and kind of discuss as a process, how do we make this a better fit between his firm and the town.
Mr. Bowen, before I continue, any questions from the board?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd rather hear from Mr. Bowen first.
Okay. I want to refer to, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Winslow?
Attorney Bowen, I too share Mr. Holmes's concerns, and I know that I've come to you once on my own wondering why something wasn't getting done, only to find out that you weren't aware. And I think that it's incumbent upon this board to ensure success in the relationship between town council and this board. Because this board actually not only hires town council, but we also are responsible for ensuring that the town administrator is carrying out our policies and directives towards how we want the town to be. And one of the things that I want to see happen is I want to see that, you know, I made the motion for your firm, and I was expecting that I wasn't going to be having all kinds of other attorneys. You and I have talked about this too. We're paying other attorneys. There's only X amount of dollars in that legal budget, 97% of which is being paid to your firm. And I clearly said the night that we, and I'm not sure if you were still in the room, and I know that Mrs. Begley wasn't sitting in her seat yet, but I clearly said the night that we hired town council that I intend to hold that budget to the line. It's not going to go over, and if it is going to go over, then Mr. Andrews is going to have to explain. And the other board members, we all agreed we're paying top dollar because we felt it was a better value because of the planning and the zoning and other things. And as you know, we've had the issue Lynn Road. We've had the Beach Street issue, which another outside attorney was being paid to work on for months before you guys got involved. And I want to see this work. And I guess if that, you know, we need to do what we can to assist you to ensure that the town's interests are best protected.
That it, Mrs. Winslow?
That's all, Mr. Chair, for now.
Mr. Bowen, it does say town council update. So after hearing from majority of the board, we're open to town council update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Naturally, an update on actual legal cases I would do in executive session. So this seems to be more of an update or a discussion about service issues rather than, you know, how is such and such a case going and so forth. I had brought the newspaper out not to read the horoscopes or do the crossword or Sudoku or whatever is in it, but just because it had some of the comments that you've made, and I was going to use it as a talking point. But since we've spoken, or you've spoken, I have a little list that I've drawn up. Since it's been my honor to be your town council since the beginning of April, what I've done is I had promised that I would come to town hall during the week at least twice a month to do office hours. As it turns out, I come at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. For example, this week I was there today. I will be there again on Thursday. So in terms of the commitment to follow through on what was promised at the interviews and in the proposals, sincerely, I think that I'm probably committing more than I had promised. It's turning out to be anywhere from 4 to 7 times a month, as opposed to the 2 that was in the proposal. With respect to attending selectmen's meetings, what we had promised was that we would attend 1 meeting of any board that you wanted per month. I'm always happy to come to a selectmen's meeting when you want me to come. I believe since the beginning of July, this is my 3rd selectmen's meeting. And I'm not sure how many selectmen's meetings there have been since the beginning of July, but maybe there were there had to have been 4, because I wasn't present at the meeting where that matter reported in the newspaper took place. So I think I'm probably more than fulfilling what was promised at that time. We've also had Jay Tallerman, who has come to the Board of Health and to the Board of Appeals, which again would be in excess of what we promised. Why are we doing more than what we promised we would do? Because we enjoy it. That this is what we like to do. We like serving you. We like all of you. We like the town. We want to see the town flourish and do well. And we think that we have the expertise to do that for you. One of the issues that was in the newspaper, and I know 2 of the selectmen this evening gently alluded to it, was an awareness of issues. And I believe there was quite a bit in the newspaper about that one. What I'd ask you to keep in mind, and I'm saying this as a former selectman myself of 6 years, is that I and my colleagues are not policymakers. We're service providers. And when you have particular issues that you want addressed, you come to us and you say, here's the question. Can you answer that for us? We don't see ourselves as, you know, a 6th selectman or an assistant town administrator. I don't cruise the blogs to find out what public opinion is. You tell me what public opinion is. You set the policies and you tell me what you want done. And I'll either find a way for it to be done, or if it looks dicey, I will say it looks dicey, here are the risks, do you still want to do it? Or if I really think it's going to get you in a lot of trouble, I'll say, please don't do it. So, a question of awareness of issues. I'm actually aware of quite a few things that go on. I mean, you don't hang around town hall as much as I do without hearing 1 or 2 things during the course of the day. Actually, more than 1 or 2 things. But for all the things that I do hear, it's up to the policymakers. That's the Board of Selectmen, that's the town administrator, to give direction. Now, if you just excuse me. There was a comment in the paper that I found a little troubling. And then when I reread it, I thought, well, perhaps it was referring to one of the other lawyers that you had referred to, Steve and Kara. It dealt with the recent issue of the restriction. And there was a statement by one of the selectmen to the effect that on that issue, it quote, it took weeks for the law firm to respond. Well, I have to tell you that didn't take weeks for me to respond when I became aware of the issue. I want to say that I was told about the particular restriction issue late on a Friday afternoon, and that I responded with my take on it within 4 or 5 hours on a Friday night, when I probably should have been out having a beer and going to a ball game. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back for doing it. I just happen to enjoy interesting questions. There was an interesting question. Hey, let's answer it. So, you know, with respect to something like that, which I find very hurtful, you know, weeks to respond to something like that. If it took me 5 hours to respond to the question, I'd be surprised. Now, there's a question of other attorneys working for the town, and let me bring it back to the Beach Street issue, if I may. I will tell you that my first involvement with the Beach Street issue was probably, I want to say, the beginning of this month, you know, maybe the first week of this month. That matter had been in the hands of Attorney Whitten, and for a while I wondered perhaps, you know, maybe this was referencing Attorney Whitten. I don't know. That matter had been in the hands of Attorney Whitten since sometime in October. Frankly, it was not an issue that I was involved in. I would have been happy to have been involved in it. I'm happy to be involved in any issue that you want me involved in. It's as simple as that. But on that particular one, when I was asked about it, again, you know, just a matter of 2 or 3 weeks ago, and gave my answer within a matter of hours, my opinion was that Attorney Whitten's view of it was probably correct. I threw out a couple of more suggestions on how it could be resolved without having to go to a town meeting, including getting a special act. I also suggested that if the board wanted to run the risk of releasing the restriction, that it could take that risk, but to be sure to get defense and indemnity agreements so that you're protected from the challenges that could come, and let's face it, knowing Wareham, probably would come. I mean, I have no doubt that there would probably be a call from the Globe Spotlight team waiting on all of our answering boxes by the time we got home on that issue. I mean, that's the environment that we live in. And so I tried to give you conservative, sound advice. And as it turned out, when finally we were able to get Mark Bobrowski, who's the gentleman who wrote the book, Attorney Whitten, and the attorney for the bank or developer all sitting together in the same room last Wednesday, it turned out that the attorney for the developer and the bank actually agreed with Mr. Bobrowski, who concurred with Attorney Whitten. And so now I guess we can wait to see whether they're going to follow up on some of the suggestions that I had made, which was file a petition in the court and get the thing lifted. Shouldn't take very long, can be done quickly, and it doesn't expose any of you to liability, or town meeting, or perhaps special legislation. You know, so within a matter of hours of getting this, I laid out all the answers for you on how to handle it. So, not a matter of weeks, please. Some of the other issues that were there, other attorneys. The other attorneys that I know of who are out there are Attorney Whitten, who has done some, although honestly I couldn't tell you how much, work for the Board of Appeals. I think we are starting to see some of that work as the cases that they were involved in are winding down, come over to us, and we're very happy to do that. Walmart, I think, is a perfect example of that. Mark Bobrowski has met twice with the Walmart officials, and I can tell you that I was present at a meeting with Walmart officials, and when they knew that Mark was coming in to handle it, they were impressed at your firepower. They had a lawyer from, I want to say it was Ropes and Gray, who said, oh yeah, I've got his book on my shelf. I know it's kind of a joke now, you know, the book's on the shelf, but the local attorney who was their point person was bowled over by it. And Um, so we've gone from a situation where, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to any other attorney who may have handled the matter in the past, because I have great respect for Attorney Whitten. I have great respect for CETA's attorney. But they know that you've got some horsepower going for you. And I can tell you whatever comes out of this is going to be the very best that can come out of it. Mark Bobrowski will drive the hardest bargain, come up with the hardest conditions, do whatever is necessary to protect the town. So we're pleased to see that that sort of thing is starting to make its way over to us. Now, do I know what other cases might be over there that we're waiting to see come up? No, honestly I don't. Is that my fault? Well, remember, I'm the service provider. You want me or my colleagues to provide that service? Give that direction. I cannot walk into any department. I'm not a selectman. I'm nobody. Well, I'm somebody, but I mean, you know what I mean. I don't have the authority to walk into any department or speak to any employee or any elected or appointed official and say, hey, hand me over all those cases. I mean, it might be humorous to watch, but it wouldn't work. So if I know one of the things that I especially took heart, especially from Kara's comments in the newspaper, they were positive. I mean, you spoke in terms of making the relationship work and figuring out what it is we need to make things work. Well, I'll tell you what I need to make things work. If you want us to handle things, let us know what they are. If I had an ESP hat, with all due respect to all of you present, whom each one of you I like very much as persons and officials, I would not be sitting here. I would be at a casino making millions of dollars right now with my magic ESP hat. But sadly, I don't have that. So here I am, trying to do my best for you. So if the stuff that you want my firm to do, if the stuff that you want me to do, all you have to do is let me know. It's really, it's absolutely as simple as that. Now, the other attorneys I left out. This is terrible. I'm forgetting the attorney for CETA. Yeah, Ray Mieres. When we made our proposal, I think Ray's proposal and our proposal ultimately came in at the same dollar figure. Obviously, the Kopelman and Page proposal, you know, after many years of being way up there, came in at a remarkably low number. The CETA work for Ray Mieres, we did put a provision in there. I had done the research on what the CETA legal budget had been traditionally, and I think it had run roughly $30,000 a year. I put an add-on option that if you had wanted us to handle CETA work, we'd do it for $12,000 a year rather than $30,000 a year. You know, there's that joke about, I know you're calling when the phone's not ringing. Well, you know, the phone hasn't rung. You know, as far as I know, you've never said, hey, Rich, we want you to do that CETA work as well. I have pitched in on CETA work, I will tell you. Peter, I've reviewed some of your contracts. When Bay Point was going through its transition, the day that we got the foreclosure notice, I mean the day we got the foreclosure notice, I was doing my office hours, and within 1 hour of that foreclosure notice hitting the town administrator's desk, we had worked out a strategy with respect to the licenses that needed to be dealt with, a strategy with respect to the options that the town held for the piece of land sitting up at Bay Point. We had set up an invitation for the federal DCU bank official to come in and meet with us so that we could advise him of the things that he needed to do so that we could keep the operation moving forward, so that the all the brides who had their weddings planned and were upset at possibly losing them would be taken care of. I guess maybe that's CETA work, but I guess the illustration I'm trying to make here is, yeah, hey, I do some of that too. So, I would say overall, you're the bosses. You know, you have a policy that you want implemented the way it happens on every board of selectmen everywhere. And the way it happened when I was a selectman was the board of selectmen takes a vote and said, here's the policy, you go do it. You know, we want to sue XYZ, or we want to do this. When you take that vote and it gets transmitted by the chairman or by the town administrator to me, because the chairman and the town administrator are my, you know, in terms of the legal work, that's where the rubber meets the road for me. These are the guys that I deal with. Apologize for calling you guys, but I can call you gals, so it's not too bad. But you know, these are my points of contact with the town. You know, so if you have policies that you want to implement, vote them. They'll pass them on, and I'll do them. So, you know, I am trying to follow through on the proactive things. I've done an ethics seminar at the management meetings that you have on Wednesday. I have an open meeting law seminar scheduled for September. I take, thank you, I take phone calls, you know, as long as I'm not in mid-bite, I'll answer the phone call, or as long as the cell phone reception is okay. I know I respond to emails at all kinds of odd hours. I know, Kara, you and I were corresponding on a Sunday night not that long ago. Really, I'm trying very hard for you. I'm open, you know, any fault that you have with the way we're doing things, I'm open to trying to fix. But we have two things. We have service issues, which are, am I giving proper legal advice? And then awareness issues. And the awareness issues, really, that has to come from this side of the table, not from here. Because you guys are the leaders. I'm not. You tell me what you want done. You vote it, I'll do it. And everything that has been conveyed to me to do, I've done. So, I guess that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? We'll start from...
I have a few questions, Mr. Chair, thanks. Attorney Bowen, I have a question regarding labor negotiations, because I wasn't here for the hiring of the firm, and from what I understand, was that part of the contract for you? Because I just heard Mr. Holmes say that they thought that Copeland and Page was going to do that. They declined. So what happened with that?
Well, it's a difficult story, and but the bottom line is that it's my understanding that the town administrator asked Copeland and Page to continue to handle labor matters, and Copeland and Page declined to do so. It did put the town in a little bit of a jam, because there was basically a trial scheduled for a week after that notice was given. There was a labor negotiation with the steel workers. 2 days later, there was a lot of scrambling that had to be done, and we got the labor negotiations put over there, and I feel very badly for the union, because up until that point they hadn't had a contract in 3 or 4 years, and now we're well along in the negotiation process. The trial matter is one that we resolved recently, and so I handled that. So I mean, the fact of the matter is that you're correct. I did not include labor services within my quote. As it turns out, I have been doing labor work in consultation with a very highly qualified attorney. We've got, what we're striving for generally with our unions is labor peace. When I say labor peace, I don't mean peace at any cost, but you have collective bargaining units that haven't had contracts in 3 or 4 years. And frankly, that's a very, very difficult situation. It's not good for your employee morale. It's bad. And I think we're moving those things forward. They may not be moved forward to everyone's satisfaction, but I've had at least one labor union representative say, hey, finally after all these years we're talking. So yeah, that was something that was not anticipated to be part of the original plan, but it's all right. I enjoy working for you.
Another question that I had, Mr. Bowen, is for the other attorneys that are being used throughout the town, for example, zoning, CBA, is it that it's historic, it's traditional to use the attorney that they're accustomed to using, or is it because of a specialty, or, how could you answer that? Because I see, like in medicine, we have general practitioners and we have specialists, so I'm just wondering if that's the same thing applies here.
It does in a way. Let me try to break the answer down. We have within our firm specialists who can cover just about anything. There is no reason why any land use board should feel that their specialist is better than our specialist, because in point of fact our specialist, and again we come back to the humorous phrase, wrote the book. So why do particular boards continue to go along with the attorneys that they've been dealing with for years? And it's a question of familiarity. They've dealt with these attorneys. I'm happy to see some of that begin to change. I cite Walmart as an example. I know Jay Tallerman has been dealing with Ken Ferreira on some issues of late. Believe me, the guys in the office say to me, hey, when are we going to start seeing more of the land use stuff come in? And I say, look, I'm working on it. I want to see that thing come our way. When we went through the business of trying to put together a quote, I spent some time going through your historic legal budget. And about 10 years ago, the town really started to get itself enmeshed in a lot of litigation. And your legal budget really began to shoot up. The delivery of legal services, as a total figure, it began to shoot up. The delivery of legal services historically, and this is to answer another part of your question, has always been fragmented among different boards. And I don't mean to pick on any board or usurp their authority or anything, but the Board of Appeals would have its own attorney, CETA would have its own attorney, the Board of Selectmen would have its own attorney. There may still be some attorney, look underneath that cloth. There might be a couple lawyers hiding under there. I don't know. But the thought when I was looking at this was that we would try to rein in as much of that as we could. There are always going to be, for one reason or another, good reasons for staying with a particular attorney who's been going the course. You're in the middle of a big piece of land use litigation. Maybe it's worthwhile sticking with that person to finish it out because of the knowledge that they have that you've already paid for. So that way you don't pay another lawyer to learn what you've already paid somebody else to learn. So, there can be good reasons to stick with outside counsel. That being said, it always struck me that historically Wareham had been somewhat inefficient in the way that it used its legal resources. And in making the proposal that we made, it was our effort to try to begin to reduce those inefficiencies. And I think we're getting there. We've been on the clock since roughly April 1st. We're slowly chipping away at some of that stuff. You know, you have some fairly large cases that were huge drains on legal resources that have been settled and are gone. And so those legal expenses are going to disappear. I think we'll get there. After 4 months or 4.5 months, are we there yet? Absolutely not. But I think we're heading in the right direction. But I think that's a larger picture that we have to work on together. I don't have control over it. I have an aspiration to get all this in. You guys are the ones who control that, not me. All I can say is, yeah, let's shake it up. I mean, my idea when I came into this was to act as a department head, and that if a particular board wanted to retain an attorney, that they would sit down and talk to me. I mean, not that I'm anybody special, but that as a department head I could say, well, why do you need that person rather than Mark Grabowski or Jay Tallerman? You know, tell me that one first, and then we talk about what happens next. You know, we've had hits and misses, but I think that's ultimately the way you want it shaken out. So, just to recap here, it's a work in progress. I think we're heading in the right direction. I very much wanted to work for you because I do enjoy working for you. I do like working in Wareham. It's a challenging place, no doubt about that. But I think I'm up for it. The awareness issues, you know, I think we can work together on that. But please keep in mind that each of you as individual elected officials are going to have, and the word agenda is often used as in a pejorative way. Oh, he's got an agenda, she's got an agenda. Well, guess what? Everybody has an agenda, and that's no crime. That's human nature. Everybody has ideas and visions that they want to carry out. We call them an agenda. Each of you as elected officials have your own ambitions and agendas to carry out to steer the town in the direction you think is important. So, but what I would ask you to do is, before you launch the plan and use me as the instrument to help carry out the plan, get the political consensus, get the vote behind your vision so that I've got clear authority to punch it through for you. I really need that. Otherwise, I'm like the man with a rope on each arm and each leg, and there are 4 horses pulling in different directions. And that's painful. So, I guess that's it.
Could I ask just one more question?
Okay.
It'll be quick. Who, this board might be able to answer it, or Attorney Bowen, who makes those decisions? I guess that's my question. Who makes, like, I don't want to pick on appeals or CEDA or anybody, but who makes that decision currently as to what attorney that they'll use? Or has that been, like, again, tradition or like historic use? I mean, how does that happen? Do they come before the board? Do they go to the town administrator? Clearly they don't go to Attorney Bowen because he's asking them to. So what happens? How does that happen?
Mr. Chair.
Kara? Yes.
Thank you. To answer Mrs. Begley's question, I think that the use of some of the attorneys is historical. But when we interviewed attorneys for town council this year, one of the things that we talked about with each of the 3 firms that responded was bringing everything in under one price. Because even though the argument is made, well, that's not paid out of the legal budget, it's still legal services being paid out of somebody's budget with tax-paying dollars. So but it's my understanding from at least two of the law firms who presented before us that evening, Mr. Bowen, Attorney Bowen, and Attorney Miares, said that it is in fact a decision of this Board of Selectmen acting through the town administrator to determine whether or not outside counsel, aside from town counsel, needs to be used. Now that was the opinion of two firms that interviewed before us, and we all know, you know, if we brought in three more legal firms, we may get three different opinions. But what I'm saying is that that was our understanding.
Did anybody have a conversation with the boards and committees that are affected by these decisions? Were they?
That would be a question for the town administrator.
Well, it would also be this board. I mean, we appoint them. We don't just leave them out. We make appointments to these boards. They're under our purview.
Well, I would agree with you. If the message wasn't clear that evening when we made the appointment, then perhaps this board needs to act tonight and issue that directive. But I thought the message was crystal clear sitting there.
Yeah,
We can watch that. We can know that it wasn't taped, but we can look at the minutes.
But the boards and committees that this board appoints is not under the town administrator's purview.
No, I understand that, but the boards and committees that are hiring outside, most of these boards and committees don't have a budget to hire an outside counsel, I guess is what I'm saying. If the historical commission needs counsel, they have to come to the town administrator to get authorization for counsel.
Right, that's policy. Yes, I understand.
Right. So it's the department heads, boards, like the planning board. No? You're shaking your head no.
I'll
Okay.
wait my turn.
If we're finished, then we'll... Mr. Holmes?
Oh, I was going to
I said it when we finished.
follow up on Mrs. Begley's
Okay.
question. I don't agree with that. I believe it was the first meeting after we hired town council, one chairman and one board that I'm a liaison to, and I won't name anybody not to embarrass them, told me right up straight that, look, you guys hired, the Board of Selectmen hired town council. That doesn't make us use that firm. We're going to continue to do what we always do. At my second meeting that month, and I think it was in June, another board basically said the same thing. We're going to continue to use the lawyer we've always used. And it's kind of come up in a loose conversation at the board. I think we mentioned it at town meeting, which is one of the reasons why I asked for this to be on tonight and to have Rich in, is so that we can get clarification and set a policy not only for these boards, because you are right, that's been my opinion, is we appoint these people. They don't work for the town administrator. They report to the Board of Selectmen. And if we have a policy that says A committee, B committee, clock committee, I always use that clock or the fire alarm committee. If you need town council or you need counsel, you go to the chairman of the board and report that. And if you go to another firm outside of what the five of us, and not Mr. Andrews, but Mr. Schneider, the five of us will make that determination that, yes, we're going to use town council. End of story. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, because we are responsible for those legal fees. And that's why we hired this gentleman here. So that's my answer to your question, Mrs. Begley. I think there's some of these chairmen think that they, quote unquote, run the town, but they really don't. When it comes to this is our purview, and I agree with that.
Well, getting back to what both selectmen said, a notice did go out to all the chairs, all departments. Before seeking counsel, they would have to come to Mr. Andrews. I did remember seeing a notice go out on that. But
Mr.
there was
Chair,
anything else?
Yeah, was that to department heads? I think
think
Mr. Andrews sent something out to department heads,
Department heads, right.
not committee chair people.
To all departments. it went
Yeah,
out.
but I'm talking about,
Okay.
you know, like conservation, historic, council on aging,
Right, and like you said, it was all historical,
boards and
and
commissions.
to change people, it's rough. In other words, you gotta take them by the hand sometimes. So, In other words, we need a directive or make sure Mr. Andrews sends it to all committees.
Well,
Because they're so in the habit of just getting on the phone and calling someone. Because I had a conversation with Mark Borowski the other day and with Mr. Witten on the same subject. And they were both receptive to what we were talking about. And whatever we need to do, they were receptive to do it. So I don't think there's a problem. It's like we said earlier, we need to work as a team. We need to get together, see what's holding us up, instead of making remarks before we get together and say this is the way we need to go. Because just because you put it on your contract, if it isn't being done, then we know you need to know why it isn't being done and what we need to do as a board to get it done. We can't assume that because we signed a contract with you, that all the committees and even department heads know that they have to come to us. We need to put it in writing, so when something does happen, they have it in writing to know. It's just like with the department heads now. They all had the notice, so if they go to another lawyer, then we need to be informed about it and find out why have they gone to another attorney. So we need to get together as a board, make sure everybody's on the same page, that we're switching over whatever they're using. If this attorney firm is handling it, then there has to be a reason. They need to talk together, and they may say, well, maybe it is better for Steve to continue because he has the information. It's to our advantage, the town of Wareham, to go along with it. If
Mr.
anything
Chair,
else, since you
yeah, I
had the
do.
floor
Is
to begin with.
Mrs. Begley finished with her questions?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment, and Mrs. Winslow has her hand up, but one quick question, or statement. I think that, I mean, don't misunderstand me. I know that we're having conversations. I don't think that just a blanket statement at this stage can just go out, because there may be some, we'll use Walmart as an example. That's a huge case. But that's not the only case that's before the Board of Appeals. So there might be many concurrently going, and I don't think that just making this blanket statement, okay, cough it up, toss it over to Attorney Bowen, is definitely not in the best interest of the town. What I'm saying is, when you go see a medical specialist, they send an update to your primary care. And I see Attorney Bowen as our primary care. So if nothing else, if we can just improve communication, I'm not saying just boom, everybody's cut off. I'm saying let's improve the communication because it doesn't seem to be getting us anywhere the way it's going.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the members and Mr. Bowen. You know, that I'm a healthcare guy too, so that kind of hits it. But I do want to go back just for a moment, because I really think that this is probably the best 45 minutes we've spent here in a long time. But, Rich, and you're absolutely correct. When you got, and I don't want to get into specific cases, but there was an issue on Swiss Beach area. When you got that information on the Thursday before, we had an answer, I believe, on the Monday or on the Friday. Mr. Cruz, it was quite a contentious meeting, and Mr. Cruz asked you and your folks to jump on it. You had just found out about it 3 days before, and you got us an answer. You're absolutely right. When it came to this latest issue on a road, that once your firm was aware of it, within a matter of hours, we had an answer. And yes, and even on the Bay Point issue, I recall you sending that message to try to help Digital understand what their rights were in having that dinner or whatever it was, some kind of a autism thing, I believe, on the Saturday. And this is 2 days before. So you're absolutely right, and that's part of the reason why we're here tonight, is because when you know about something, we get a quick response. We get everything that we ask for in that agreement. The problem lies is that since May, on the Swiss Beach area thing, people were being told town council is looking at this. Town council is looking at this. I mean, you can probably find some of those quotes in the papers too. But the problem is you didn't know about it. You are town council. And that's part of the issue. So I like Mrs. Begley's, not to put words in her mouth, but I like this primary care thing. You talked about a department head thing, where if somebody on a board or committee or even in our administration in this town, wants to go to a lawyer, I like that. Call Rich or call Jay and say, hey, here's the case we got. Here's what we got going on. Is this beneficial for you to take over in the middle? Is it beneficial for us to continue and move down that road? If it's something new, then I would support you doing it, because then you have all your specialists in one medical group, right? So my question to you is this. In other towns that you work with, and you work with several, have the Board of Selectmen or the City Council or administrations, do you have a policy that you use in other towns, or you've written for other towns, that would help this Board of Selectmen enact in Wareham to try to help this to move forward with a better working relationship, and to try to funnel this through the primary care physician, if you will?
Well, I love the primary care physician analogy, because I think it's better than department head. You know, town council is a funny position. I was in court today, and I was speaking with someone who was a town council in another community, and I knew I was coming here to meet with you tonight to have this discussion, and so I said, Kevin, you know, what's it like in the town where you're town council? And he said, oh, that's easy. He said, town council is called on to make politically unpopular decisions. I thought, well, that's an interesting approach to the problem. That's not a model I advocate. I think it would make two things would make my job easier, which would mean I can do a better job for you. Number one, if there are particular issues of concern that you are aware of, because you're going to be, you are going to be aware of this stuff. You're hypersensitive to what's going on in the community, so your receptors are highly attuned to problems that are developing. If there's a way, when you sense that those problems are developing, to, through a policy, get that information to me so that it's on my logbook, so I know, you know, and I don't want to use particular cases here, but you know, such and such thing is turning into a problem. If the board can adopt a policy that those types of things can be put as a symptom in my hands, I can react to them, and I think you can get better results overall. Rather than letting and I'm sorry I've fallen into the medical phraseology, but you know, rather than letting the patient get sick and possibly die, you know, early report of the symptoms would be.
Mr. Chair, just to, we have a policy. It's 88-2, and it's access to town council. Did you want me to read it for the board, or access? Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Access to town council. Requests for the opinion or use of services of town council shall first be initiated by a vote of the majority of a town board, committee, commission, or by a department head. The chairman of that board, committee, commission, or department head shall then forward such a request to the town administrator together with the reasons for the request. If the town administrator agrees that the request is appropriate and proper, he or she will carry the request forward in writing to town council. In the event that the town administrator should disagree with the request for use of town council services, he will place in writing the reasons for such disagreement and will forward his reasons to the board, committee, commission, or department head and to the Board of Selectmen. If any board, committee, commission, or department head so wishes to appeal the decision of the town administrator, they may do so to the Board of Selectmen. All written opinions of town council will also be filed with the selectmen and the town clerk, except in matters involving litigation or prospective litigation, which shall be marked confidential. All requests for the initiation or defense of litigation shall require the approval of the Board of Selectmen or the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen in those instances which require expeditious action by the town. This policy shall not conflict with those town officers entrusted to uphold and enforce the Massachusetts general laws, and this policy shall take place immediately. And this is from January 19th, 1988.
Town council as defined was?
Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, is it my turn now? I also found a policy from 1989 that deals with town council, and it, it says pretty much the same thing. However, it adds that
Excuse me.
the Board of Selectmen shall approve all bills for town council services prior to making payment, and I think that was done as a way to ensure that all these types of bills that are going out all over the place. But anyways, back to the discussion at hand. Mrs. Begley touched on points that I'm concerned about. Mr. Holmes did, so I'm not going to sit here and reiterate that. My concern at this point is that 4 months into it, we still do not have any active transfer of existing cases. When your firm took over, and I'm not saying this to you directly, Attorney Bowen, I'm saying this to everybody sitting at the board and the town administrator. We all saw the letters go to Copeland and Page about the urgency of packing up the case files, when they would be ready for pickup, and getting those cases transferred. And when I believe it was the treasurer, and Mrs. Begley didn't have, necessarily hasn't seen those letters, but she could if she wanted to go to the office. When I think it was the treasurer wanted to retain Copeland and Page, a few days later a letter went out and said, no, that's not going to happen. So there was some urgency in getting everything that Copeland and Page had out of Copeland and Page, but there doesn't seem to be an urgency about these other, and I don't have a problem with Attorney Witten or Attorney Myers or any other attorney. My concern is simply this. We have a $200,000 legal budget. I am willing to bet you money that if you take your annual fee for the year plus what we've already spent on outside attorneys, we're already over that dollar figure. We're already there, and we're not even 2 months into the fiscal year. And I have a real concern about that because now we have consultation with the Labor Council. Nobody on this board knows what we're paying for that. And we have a duty to this community when it comes to those dollars and how they're being spent. And quite frankly, we need to really be paying close attention to this, because if we end up with a $300 and something thousand legal bill because we're paying an outside consultant for labor, and law is like medicine. You wouldn't go to a podiatrist to operate on your heart, just like you wouldn't go to a general legal practitioner or a land use practitioner to deal with sensitive employee matters. So I understand the need for that, but I just kind of feel, and I'm hoping that my colleagues are going to agree with me, that the town administrator needs to facilitate the first step is anything new that comes in needs to go to this council. There are going to be cases that, are too deep to transfer at this point, but nothing new should be given to the outside councils that may be out there. We need to get as much as we can over to the law firm that we hired to do it. And there shouldn't be a choice when an issue comes up. It shouldn't be, well, we'll give it to town council or we'll give it to someone else. No, everything should go to town council. And if it's not going to work that way, and again, this is not directed at you, Attorney Bowen, if it's not going to work that way, then this board needs to revisit the town council issue, because we simply we don't have the money in the budget to pay for what we're doing now. And 8 months down the road, as we come to close the fiscal year, we're going to be looking at closing a gap in a budget that's already too tight. So, and I just want to point that out now in August.
Okay, I think everyone's made the same remark about going to Mr. Bowen first with his firm, and I think that's logical. But on the same token, we have things that need to be settled because we reached the budget. Do you stop going to other attorneys for advice? Or if he doesn't handle it, whatever we need to do. If there aren't any other, I'll go to Mr. Town Administrator Mark Andrews.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I just want to make for the record, in my 30 years of public service, working with Attorney Bowen has been a remarkable experience. You created for this town free Law Day Fridays where department heads, and I invite every board member and anybody in the audience who want to come up on the 3rd floor of Town Hall and see the stream of department heads that come through that seek out counsel well in advance of any issues materializing. So we're heading a lot of stuff off at the pass, if you will. A comment was made earlier, already paid for. Well, on a case that will come up in a little bit, we already paid for 1 attorney, 2 attorney, 3 attorneys to look at it, got the same legal opinion. So as far as I'm concerned, and I said this at the last meeting, it's my job to make certain that we don't shop opinions, because shopping opinions is a very dangerous business to be in my humble opinion. And I happen to agree that if there is a policy, to Selectwoman Bagley's point, let's adhere to that policy. We don't take assigning cases or issues lightly. In many cases, if there's an attorney that has worked on a matter and it's already paid for, let's make sure we get the best bang for our buck out of that. As for balancing the legal budget, we did it last year, we'll do it this year, and we'll stick by what we have. If we have cases that require some form of a transfer, I'll ask this body to allow me to do that if in fact it advances the best interest of this town. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I believe that we can move forward. It is a transition period. This is not where it's cookie cutter. And I just ask Attorney, just real quick, because I think Selectman Holmes hit it on the head. Where has it not been a transition for a town to move to a single town council, in your experience as legal counsel?
It's always a process, and not always a short one. I went away for a couple of days on the weekend, and when I came back, I found on my doorstep, well, not literally on the doorstep, it was inside the screened storm door area, a file from Kopelman and Page. And I was like, whoa, what do we got here? And I sat down and went through it. So clearly, no matter how long you've been in the business, whether it's a smaller company like mine or a gigantic company like theirs, there's a transition process. We've worked diligently. We have appearances in on all the cases. We've moved things forward. But just to get back to one point on the sensitivity issue, on responsiveness, when issues are starting to percolate, if we can find a way to get that information to the legal department so that we can jump on that, if we can come up with a way to institutionalize that, I think we'll be in good shape. Thank you.
Mrs. Winslow, did you have something or no? I thought I seen your hand go up.
The last comment that I have to make in terms of the responsiveness, and I do think that Mr. Holmes may have touched on this, is that when an issue comes up, the Board of Selectmen is a volunteer board that isn't in Town Hall all the time, but when an issue comes up that seems to be unusual or out of the ordinary, it's my belief that the town administrator should bring it to you before it becomes a Lynn Road. Because let's face it, we're going to face litigation over that one way or another. And Jay Tallerman sat before this board in a room full of over 200 people and said that he had just got the information 3 days before. And that's the kind of stuff, Attorney Bowen, that makes the 5 of us, you and the town administrator, look bad. That shouldn't have happened. And that's what I want. That's what I really want to try and avoid. And you can't read minds. I can't read minds. That's an issue that the town administrator has got to deal with the department heads on, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens from this point forward, as Jay said, had we known about it sooner, he may have been able to discuss different options with us. But by the point we were at, I think he put it, the toothpaste was already out of the tube. I kind of like that.
Sounds like Jay.
Yeah. So it's those types of things that become really problematic. And at the end of the day, the only thing that you can do for us is defend whatever will come along in the future. And I would rather be proactive than reactive in those regards. Not just as a matter of litigation, but as a matter of public policy, which is what this board sits here to do. Craft policy and shape the community. You know, we're all 5 different people, and, you know, yes, we all have different visions, and it would look a little weird if each of us did our own thing, but at some point we have to all at least come to a middle ground on those things, so.
Mr. Bowen, I thank you for
Thank you for letting me
coming
come
up.
before
and,
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry?
Are you running out?
No.
It depends on how many people have got the pitchforks and the torches, but no.
I saw several go down.
Oh,
Get away.
Can I make a motion for 5-minute
5 minutes.
recess?
Yeah, please.
Sounds like it's good to me. 5-minute recess.
Do we have a second?
Motion made and second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? 400.
Thank you,
We'll
Mr.
now
Chair.
resume with the continuation of the meeting. Next on the agenda is the CEDAR update. Mr. Sanborn.
Wow, it's 3 pages. Oh, 3 pages.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Andrews. Not sure I know how this mic works.
So you have to put it close if you can, unless
Is
you
it
wanna
on?
change seats.
Okay.
It has to be very close, Mr. Sanborn.
All right, thank you. I will attempt to be as brief as possible tonight, which is not one of my usual qualities, but just wanted give the board sort of a review of the status of current major activities of the CEDA office. I've been the acting CEDA director now for 10 months and 1 week, so started on October 15th of last year. And I'd say in that period of time, CEDA has made major progress on its activities. When I assumed the position, because of the departure of the prior director, and the period of time that there was no director prior to his hiring, as well as the fact that there was a key staff person on leave. When I started in October, basically at the time, there was 1 full-time employee and 2 part-time employees trying to handle all of the responsibilities of the CEDA office. And not surprisingly, because of that, a lot of the grants that CEDA was operating were behind schedule. So we worked diligently to bring these grants up to schedule and to meet requirements so that the town would be able to apply for the FY11 Community Development Block Grant, which it did, which was just awarded after some delay at the state level, was awarded last month. So the town was awarded a $1 million Community Development Block Grant in July. I think there's an action later on tonight's agenda for the board to basically reaffirm that acceptance of that grant. So with that FY11 grant, the town currently has 3 active grants, one a fiscal year 9 Community Development Block Grant, which is nearly done. We're 99% expended. We should be fully expended on that grant by the end of the month, unless unforeseen things happened. Everything I'm going to summarize for you tonight, hopefully, is also in this 3-page memo in somewhat greater detail. The town also received an federal fiscal year 2010 Community Development Block Grant for $1 million. That grant is currently in midpoint of being implemented. So between the new grant and the FY10 grant, CEDA will be administering $2 million in community development block grants. CEDA, as you may or may not be aware, also administers the DEP Title V septic loan program. On the last page of my memo, I've given you a brief status report on that. The town approved the acceptance of round 6 funding last year. The paperwork was finalized on that, and CEDA started implementing the actual loans, processing the loan applications from homeowners in February of this year, and we're getting a lot of interest, a lot of activity on it. We are in fact, while not fully extended to that level, we have about 75% of that $200,000 already expended or in the pipeline or under contract. So, and as I've noted here, because of the sewer expansion in town, we're getting a lot of interest for financial assistance from property owners who want to do tie-ins, as well as doing replacement of failed septic systems. A significant project that CETA is overseeing is actually being funded from both the FY10 and the 11 grants, and that is the implementation, the construction of the streetscape design project in Wareham Village. We had actually hoped to get that under construction before now, but because we needed 2 years of funding to be able to underwrite the construction contract, the delay in the award in this new grant has delayed us from starting that project. However, that project will be going out to bid for construction bids at the very beginning of September, in early September. We hope to have a good bid so that we can award a construction contract in late September. I've had some discussions with GAF engineers, who are the project engineers on this, as well as Mr. Gifford from Municipal Maintenance, whether we should just defer the entire start of construction till next spring. We've actually decided, and we've worked out a strategy, which in fact we need to do, is that we hope to be able to accomplish some amount of construction in the village on that project this year before we have a winter shut down. What we're hoping to be able to do, we'll ultimately leave it to the contractor, but we're going to very strongly communicate to the contractor that the Main Street in the village cannot be torn up over the winter. So our hopeful approach is this phase 1 project runs from Center to Sawyer and the side alleyways over to Merchant Ways. We're actually hoping that we can start, surprisingly, there's a significant amount of work on those side alleyways from Main over to Merchant's Way. And we're hoping to tackle those first and get a significant portion, certainly not a majority, but a significant portion of that work done before winter sets in. And if we have a mild winter, maybe we'll be able to continue some work. I've talked to Mr. Gifford about whether he really wants to necessarily mandate a close down of construction or not. He said it's really going to depend on the winter. So also want to briefly update you on 2 other things that are in the works right now. One is literally a MassWorks application. MassWorks, which you may or may not be aware of, is sort of a repackaging by the state of several different grant projects into one sort of omnibus package where you apply for infrastructure type of projects. And we are preparing a MassWorks application that will request funding to complete additional phases of the village streetscape work. As conceived, the project that I inherited when I came here, this was broken out into a 4-phase project. We would, and I'm hoping that we can get MassWorks funding to fund ideally the 3 remaining phases that are not going to be funded here, but if not, at least some portion of them, because the alternative seems to be we'll have to go to this 4-phase project over 4 years, which probably extends a construction period for a 5 to 6 year period. Not constant construction, but it would have to be phased in that way, because the only other than MassWorks, the only other really likely source of funding are the community development block grants. So we would have to allocate a certain amount of funds each year sequentially, because there simply aren't enough funds from any one grant to fund the balance of the project. So we are preparing a MassWorks application that will be submitted to the Commonwealth's Department of Transportation by mid-September. And the last project that I just would like to mention, because it does tie into what's happening in the village, is an EDF application, Economic Development Fund application. It's a specialized pot of money under DHCD's Community Development Block Grant Program. They have sort of a general fund, then they have some specialized pots. And this would be to provide funding assistance to, hopefully if funded, to Mike Fitzgerald's property at 367 Main Street to basically do a renovation as a mixed-use property with 6 affordable rental apartments on the upper floor and 5 commercial units on the at the lower level, which is sort of the sloping lot there. It's at grade, it's basement. This could be retail, or it could be tradesperson space for workshops or whatever. So earlier this month, we submitted a preliminary application for funding for that project. We're waiting to hear back from DHCD for their initial reaction to it. Hopefully it will be favorable, and they'll invite the town to submit a full application for it. So with that, I think I'll just end and say it's been a pleasure working here so far. I hope to be continuing here for a few more months. So, and I've been discussing, and we have a continuation of our contract in the works with the town administrator. So, be happy to entertain any questions the board might have.
This time we'll start from Mrs. Winslow area.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Thank you very much. I do want to say that I'm very happy to see the progress that's been made since you arrived. And my comments are not directed at you as a person, because I think you've done a fine job. My concern is that while you've done a very fine job, and I sincerely hope that someone of your qualifications and caliber lands in the full-time position, it is time for Wareham to fill that position. And I would like to see a transition plan where you stay on board for the beginning of that person's start, so that we don't have, because I think what's happened is the last few directors have left rather quickly, and there's been absences. And so somebody comes in and they're playing catch up to where someone left off. As much as I like your work, and I know the CETA board is very impressed with your work, and some of them have called me and told me, and I obviously love that kind of feedback because it's important for me to know. We do need someone who's here on a full-time basis, and I'm sure you would agree with that when you see the amount, the amount of work that CETA is doing and bringing wonderful things to the community. So I'm not opposed to an extension of the contract. In fact, I want to see you stay on board until somebody, comes in, and at least the first 90 days that someone new is here. But I just want you to understand where I'm coming from when I talk about the full-time position, because it's certainly not a reflection on you or the work that you've done. It's very impressive, and I'm very happy to see it. It's what I hoped that CETA could be. And I think that anybody new who walks in the door with your guidance will continue that energy and enthusiasm that you've shown for that department and carry that forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bailey. Steve?
Hey, thank you very much for that report, Peter. I don't have anything more to say about it other than it's a good report, and I think you're doing a fine job. I I know that we asked for some capacity issues, and I guess that seems to be in your plan over the next 6 months, I think, when we talked about it in July, correct?
That's
To
right.
get- to get through
And
the-
I assume the administrator shared a memo that I wrote a couple of, in July, in part that was discussing capacity issues.
Right, yeah, 'cause I remember back September or August, where capacity was used here one night about 50 times. I was at that end of the table then. And so I think that's important, and also to note that in terms of capacity, I think it was our July meeting, if I'm not mistaken, where the board voted, the CETA board voted to have you include in that extension some additional hours, I believe, from staff in your firm, correct? Mrs. Bessie made the motion to help deal with some of that over the next 6 months, right?
I don't remember it quite that way. What I think may have occurred was I alerted the board to the fact that because our original contract with the town did not have a set termination date. It did have a set fee, and I was alerting the board, I believe this is what happened, I was alerting the board to the fact that we were exhausting our contract, so there needed to be something done about it, and under 30B procurement, the town could amend our contract by up to 25% of the original contract value if it wanted to continue our services. And that's what that's what I recall the discussion being about, that there would be a need to extend the contract.
I'll have to go back and look at that then, because that's not the conversation I recall. The conversation was that there were some issues where the chairman had asked for updates, and we didn't have updates every month, and then we talked about capacity, and then the motion was made that maybe you could bring in some more staff from your firm to get through the next several months.
There's always been other staff helping me. I mean, I've been the face person here.
I'll go back and look at it, Peter.
Okay, but
I was really hoping that was the case, to make sure that we had enough hands, especially with the downtown project and some other huge projects, and we're getting ready to start another grant year. Prepare for the next grant in December, to have everything filed by December. I was really hoping that I had heard that correctly, but I'll go back and check it as well.
I guess just so the board knows, they did not hire me individually. They hired my firm. My firm, there's a total of 16 full and part-time employees in my firm. So while I am the face person here most of the time, I also do work for the town when I'm not here. And there are other staff who I have assigned certain responsibilities to. For example, this MassWorks application, the EDF application, and the Agawam Village project at the Housing Authority are all being principally handled by a colleague of mine. I'm overseeing their work, but they are taking the principal responsibility for it. So that's just one example.
Go ahead,
Mrs. Bagley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your patience, Mr. Sanborn, and for the committee members that came in to support you. I have a question, and I have probably another question and a comment. What is the estimated cost for the entire streetscapes project?
I believe it's upwards of $3 million. I honestly don't have it at my fingertips right now.
The ballpark is great. And I guess my question is this. This summary that you provided is quite impressive. And I don't think that many people in the town understand the amount of work that the CETA board does and that you do. And I wonder if this document couldn't go on the website so that other people know what's going on with CETA.
Sure.
I would love to see an update like this for just about every board. This is all about communication. You're going to get people behind you if they know what you're doing. And this is very impressive, the number of grants, how they're being expended. So for those that have questions or what's been going on for the last, as you said, 10 months, is that right? It would be great to have something like this up on the CETA's website, if that's possible. But thank you very much for your very hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your update. If the town administrator has anything?
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, I want to thank Peter and the company for their fine work with the town. I'll harken back just for a minute where there was a revolving door of directors coming through the town, which is not a healthy thing, particularly when you're talking about community and economic development, very serious topics and programs. You have helped us secure just about every penny of the dollars that we went after. Is that fair to say, Peter?
In the past 10 months.
Well, that's
Yeah,
okay.
I can't take
Just
credit
up to
for
this
those
moment.
grants that were awarded before me, as much as I'd like to.
And my second part of that question is it not a critical time where, if you were sitting where we are, that you would make certain that the next grant application was fully developed as you have for the past grants, and that we have them submitted on time, and they go through a review process at the State Department of Housing and Community Development? Would you not say that it's a critical period of time?
I would. I mean, I don't want to get into necessarily a debate with the Board of Selectmen. I agree fully that CETA deserves a full-time director, and with all due respect to Ms. Winslow, I don't disagree with that. However, I think not only has our firm been serving as director, we've been trying to rebuild an office that, out of no fault to the existing staff there, really suffered immensely from the turmoil that occurred for a few years preceding that. And that, I think, is the rebuilding of the office, the rebuilding of trust amongst people, and just the sense that somebody cares about what this department does, I think, is still in a somewhat fragile stage. It's getting stronger, I think, every day. I'm not trying to be touchy-feely about this, but I think it still is fragile. And with all due respect, and I understand this is a self-serving comment, I think it is a little bit early to start a search for a new director. My intent was always to start that, to recommend that the town start that search in 2012. But we have a lot of things on our plate between now and the end of this year, and I think this would be a distraction to CETA. And I'm really trying to build much more of a team and esprit de corps sense in that office, and it's working, I think. And it needs to be reinforced, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanborn. I appreciate your report, and thanks for all the good work you're doing and insight you're bringing into our CETA board. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe that someone asked Peter to give that report, but I believe this is my agenda item, is it not? CETA update?
I thought it was.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed the report, and you know, and I go back to the earlier conversation with the trash and the pickup, and it really is impressive when I happen to be the liaison to that board, and it really is impressive to see every grant that they're working on and see all the process and the progress that takes place. And I think that, you know, it would be worthwhile to give CETA, you know, 20 minutes, you know, especially when we get back into full session, and maybe they could come in some night and do a PowerPoint on all these graphs and show us what's going on. The reason that this is on the agenda tonight is because I have been accused of being confused, and I don't like to be confused, so I will begin this way. Back before Mr. Sanborn came, I believe the last incident where the police were called to the multi-service center. A husband was called to the multi-service center. Mrs. Donahue, our chairman at the time, was called at her job in Newport, and there were fights constantly in the office, and at the time they were in this building. And it was really becoming an emergency situation and an urgent matter. The current director at that time, and I won't use any names, really felt that he did not want to manage that office. And when you read his job description, the first thing it said in there was to manage the staff in the office. But his impression of supervision and his job description just didn't match. So after Mrs. Donahue got that call, and I believe others on the board at the time, Mrs. Ekstrom was here, you, Mr. Chairman, and Mrs. Winslow. I never got any personal calls about it. I heard about it, but I think Mrs. Ekstrom may have gotten some calls. I believe she was here. If she wants to, if you allow her to comment, if she needs to comment, that would be fine. And so, as a Board of Selectmen, we are the authority that the state recognizes for CETA. And quite frankly, in a meeting with the state director, they don't even recognize our CETA board as an authority. They recognize the Board of Selectmen when it comes to the town of Wareham. And that evening, and there were some notes that were sent out and copies of the minutes, and it was very clear what our issues were in the supervision of that staff in the office. And I believe it was either myself or Mrs. Ekstrom who made that motion. I seconded the motion to relinquish those supervisory work of the staff in that office to the town administrator. He was here in the building every day. He works for the Board of Selectmen. And we were allowed to do that under the acts, the special acts that were granted to Wareham. Well, after 2 weeks ago, you can imagine my surprise when I saw a letter that went out the next day, and this really clears up my confusion quite well. There was a letter that went to Mr., I think his name is Sigenthal, at the state level from Mr. Andrews, stating that the Board of Selectmen had given full authority of CETA to the town administrator. And Mr. Chairman, my memory of that evening and the circumstances around that were not that the previous Board of Selectmen gave full authority to anybody to be the full authority over CETA, except for this Board of Selectmen. And so my point of putting this on the agenda tonight is, if there is any confusion there, who the authority is over CETA, I'll make a motion here, we can clear that up. But there are three of us who were here that night, and Mr. Andrews was here. But clearly, providing supervision to staff in an office is not relinquishing full authority of the CETA authority to the town administrator. So that's what I want to discuss tonight, so we can get this cleared up once and for all. Thank you.
Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I went back and watched the tape of that meeting, and the office was kind enough to give me the disc. And during that meeting, there was a great deal of discussion, some of it a little testy, about the reason for delegating the administrative duties to the town administrator. And the former chair, Mrs. Donahue, was very clear in what those administrative duties were. The scheduling of vacation, the dealing of disciplinary issues. There had been some issues that had gone on in the office that we as a board could not deal with on a regular basis. We couldn't obviously just leave our jobs and run to town hall to deal with a problem in the middle of the day. I asked Mrs. Donahue what that meant in terms of the hiring and or firing of a CETA director who is an employee that reports to this board. Mrs. Donahue very clearly stated that that was not something we were relinquishing. Not. And anybody can go back and watch that tape. Anybody can go to WCTV and get a copy of it. In fact, I have a copy of it. Just call me. I'll be happy to share. That's if you don't want to pay the fee. It was crystal clear that night in Mrs. Donahue's own words that the only duties that we were relinquishing were the administrative, day-to-day oversight of the office. The director wants to take vacation. So you have to wait for it to be voted on by the board? No. He goes to the town administrator, schedules his vacation. Disciplinary problems, as Mr. Holmes alluded, there were some issues in the office. But the ultimate, the CETA director will be hired by and will report to the Board of Selectmen. If you go back and watch the tape, the minutes aren't quite as clear as I would like them to be. I wish they used the word administrative as opposed to defining it the way that Mrs. Donahue had that night when she went back over the duties after my question. But it is on tape for all to see. So the letter that was sent, that we were all sent a copy of, was not entirely correct.
Mr. Begley, you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cruz. I have two questions. One is, what was the exact language of the motion? Because I don't know what that is. And two, if this board hires or fires, I guess, a CETA director, then this board should know that he's 10 months into a 12-month contract. It's a 12-month contract for Mr. Sanborn, Mr. Andrews.
What was the length of your contract?
The length of the original contract, Mr. Sanborn?
It did not have a length.
So there was
Month
no
to month.
end time.
It hit a dollar amount, so it was really, actually it may have been, I'm not certain. It may have had a nominal termination of December of this year. I honestly can't remember.
Mr. Sanborn, you got to speak into the microphone. The people at home can't hear you.
I can't tell you with certainty what our termination date was on the contract. It was really more governed by the total fee of the contract. The termination date, original termination date, may have been just through December of this year. I'm not certain, though.
Thank you.
We'll have the town administrator, if he can elaborate on it. Do you have any information on that?
I believe it was a 6-month contract period time that we had estimated to get to the end of the fiscal year, Peter, and then we made appropriate extensions from there to this point. And to your point earlier, if I could to you, Mr. Chairman, I did send to every board member a copy of the typed minutes. Now I know they might vary, but I have the motion in front of me. I know Selectwoman Begley asked for that. The motion made by Selectwoman Brenda Ekstrom moved to have the CETA director to work under the the administrative direction of the town administrator. Now, that wasn't my motion. All I know is, and I think Selectman Holmes hit it on the head, is that we had a fair amount of non-business-like activity happening, is probably the best way to say it, and it was recognized by the state. And I just want to state clearly for the record that Mr. Siegenthaler had come in because members of this board met with him in my office, and Mr. Siegenthaler had asked me for a letter indicating how we were going to proceed. And if I didn't choose the right words or adjectives or whatever, I apologize. But the end result is here before us tonight. Staff that's working in harmony. We didn't miss $1 of opportunity with regards to community development work. And it took really a cauterization, if that's the right word, of the situation to get us to the point where we are now working on capacity issues and moving forward on other types of grants that the CETA area had not worked on in the past. So I did send this around to each of the members of the board. I did CC the board at the time when I did send this letter, so if I didn't choose the right words, I'm very sorry. But I'm not sorry for the advancements that we've made in this area that are critical to this town. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The word in the motion is administrative. And I think as long as we're clear about that, because I really don't have a problem with the day-to-day operations of the CETA office. When it comes down to interviewing and hiring a candidate and overseeing the overall job that the successful candidate does, those responsibilities still lie with the Board of Selectmen. Well, right now, yes, but he's before us tonight telling us all the good... Okay, I'm done.
Mr. Holmes?
Peter, you can go back to you.
Oh, sorry.
Wasn't sure.
That's what
Yeah.
I was trying to motion him. He doesn't need to sit there. And here's my point. Listen, I'm a big fan of CETA. I have no issues on that side of the table. My issues are on this side of the table. That yes, and I don't care if you use the word have the director work for the town administrator or not, or report to him. I don't have a problem with that. But a letter was sent to the state, and quite frankly, I went to my inbox, and I don't lose too many emails, and I never found that letter, and others didn't have it either. But full authority over CETA needs to be corrected with the state. The last letter that was sent to the state was this Board of Selectmen, or previous board, sorry, relinquished full authority of CETA to the town administrator. So now that might be a description, and Mr. Andrews apologized, and that's fine with me, but we need to get a letter back to the state stating that this board, or the previous board, did not relinquish full authority to the town administrator in the town of Wareham. And to further, I do recall reading, and I had printed that thing out, but I remember Mrs. Donahue stating very clearly that we still the ones, the 5 of us selectmen, have to do the director's evaluations and all that kind of stuff, and run through the goals and objectives, and meet with the CETA board on a regular basis here, as we always did in the past. That's all stopped. And now I think I understand why, is because in that letter to the state, it says that this board, or the previous board, abdicated all responsibility to the town administrator. And I think we just need to clear that up.
Mr. Chairman,
That's my point.
if I could just briefly, I'm happy, and I don't disagree with what Selectwoman Winslow indicated, that you have the authority to work on the job description, put it out to the world for their response. This was a matter by which we were working to fill the shoes of a director, and also make certain that the state realized, because at some point I think this board, members of this board, talked about perhaps even losing some of the grant money, that it was a potential given the time. So I wanted to be forceful, and I don't back up from my statement on that, to let the state know that we were taking this very seriously, that we had moved. In fact, we moved the CETA offices in their physical capacity from this building, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the board, right alongside the town administrator's office. So I think that was significant in the standpoint that we have a wonderful authority that needed to have some stability. And I did meet with, and members, I think you were there, Steve, with Mr. Siegenthaler, and he never said to me that, geez, Mark, you're going to have to go back and write the job description and do the interviews. That's not what I was intending to do. That we needed to put the biggest bandage on a situation, in my opinion, and we did. And everything that you heard tonight from the acting director is that. And I have never blocked him. In fact, I've asked Peter, I asked you to take the microphone one last time, Peter, real quick. How many times have I asked you to give board updates and, you know, what's going on with the streetscape projects? And we talk about that at leadership team just about every week. Is that a fair statement? And I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So come back whenever you like. Come back next week if you want. So I don't know where the inference is that I wanted to interview and select the next CETA director. It's not in my letter. My letter clearly states that we're working to bring together a situation, hopefully to some positive conclusion, which I think we have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, very quickly, obviously, it's not a short process to hire a new director. So I would like I'd like to make a motion that the existing job description be given to the CETA board for recommendations to our board no later than October 1st in revisions so that we can start working on it. And, you know, they're free to consult with Mr. Sanborn on that, or we can when we make decisions. But I do think we need to get the ball rolling, especially if we're looking at early 2012. By the time we get a job description and a posting together, it's already Christmas, so, because nothing works quick here.
Okay, so you'll just, instead of elaborating on it, just make the motion?
I make a motion that the existing job description for the CETA director be given to the chairman of the board of CETA for distribution to that board, and recommended, that's the key word, recommended, not saying we're going to go along with it, revisions to that job description be presented to the Board of Selectmen no later than the first meeting in October, which would be October 4th.
Is that on a Tuesday or no?
That's a Tuesday.
Thank
So they would need to have it in to us by September 29th at noon. I believe the agenda would close. And they should be prepared to discuss that with us that evening.
Motion made.
A second?
Motion made and second for discussion.
So-
Any other discussions? Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, through you to Ms. Winslow. Did you say September 29th?
Yes.
So
they
they
would
only have, well, today's the 22nd, 23rd, right?
yeah.
The next CETA meeting, Mrs. Connaughton is here, so where was it, like September 5, 6, 12, because Monday's a holiday, right? Can we give them at least another meeting? We only have one meeting before your deadline, on the 5th, 12th, sorry.
So when is the October meeting?
Huh? No, but to the CETA board, she wants to the CETA board.
So that's the 3rd. So then I'll revise my motion to, it should be made available to the selectmen for discussion by October 11th. That gives them 2 meetings.
Yeah, because they can do the work on their own, you know.
Well, that's
and
what I
come
was
together.
thinking. It's kind
But
of
you need, I think you need
it's a
at least,
take-home project.
if you don't mind, I think you need at least 2 meetings.
That's fine.
to sit down.
I'll revise the motion to the October 11th meeting, which means that it needs to be in our office by October 6th at noon. To close the agenda.
I'll re-second that motion.
Okay, she
I'll
made it.
second that motion. Yeah, 'cause I don't see much changing in the description personally.
I just want recommendations.
Right.
That's, you know, what they
Got it.
think might be lacking. That's all. Maybe
Okay,
there's none.
Just restate. The first motion is dead, so just restate.
I make a motion that the existing job description for the CETA director be given to the chairman of the board of CETA for distribution to the board for recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. Those recommendations shall be turned into our office no later than Thursday, October 6th at noon to be on the agenda for discussion for October 11th.
Second.
Motion made and second. There aren't any more discussions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
0-0.
Now with that, Mr. Clerk, can we continue?
Well, and I guess the second half, the whole point of the discussion was over this authority and the relinquishing of this authority by the previous Board of Selectmen. And I think this Board of Selectmen needs to probably weigh in now on how much of our responsibilities are we willing to relinquish. Because right now the state was reported by the town administrator that the Wareham Board of Selectmen relinquished all full authority of Cedar, and I disagree with that. Maybe the terminology is wrong, and that's fine, but now it's time to send them another letter with the correct terminology.
Well, I think that's a good thing for us to talk about right now. We can talk about it if you want to make a motion, and then we can
well, I have no
discuss it.
problem making the original, repeating the original motion, Mr. Chair, and that is that the Board of Selectmen authorized Mr. Andrews, that the Wareham Board of Selectmen authorized the town administrator to supervise day-to-day activities within the Cedar office in terms of their staffing. That's a motion I just made. Trying to clear up the original.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I missed that.
Want me to say it again?
No, I'll second it.
Motion made, second. Kara, second.
Second.
Motion made and second. For discussion?
Mr. Chairman, and all I'm trying to do here is establish that the Wareham Board of Selectmen retain the state recognition as the authority over Cedar. Again, I have no complaints about the work that Mr. Sanborn has done, that the Cedar Board has done. You go in the office today, you can see it's a much better environment. I agree. I was one of the ones who recommended that we bring them from this building over across from the town administrator's office. I fully supported all that. And we do have good results. And I'm not trying to change that at all by giving relinquishing our day-to-day supervisory activity of the staff to the town administrator. That's what the original intention of the original motion was. But in terms of authority over Cedar, the 5 selectmen in the town of Wareham should not relinquish full authority over that Cedar authority to anyone. That's my opinion.
Okay, if there was a cloud on that, if this clears it up, but I don't think the intent ever was that he had responsibility for the whole Cedar, because the way it's been working now, I think it's been working as was implemented by the previous board. But if this is going to clarify it, we have a motion on the floor. If there isn't any more discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? 4-0-0. And the letter would
And,
go out
Mr.
on that to the state.
Mr. Chairman, and
Yes,
one last comment on that, and I would also make a motion that a letter go off to Mr. Siegenthal and the Cedar Director and the Cedar Chairman, as well as the Board of Selectmen from the Town Administrator, clearing up that issue so that the state understands exactly what
Yes,
is meant
Mr.
by
Holmes,
the-
I just made that clear
Oh, you did?
to Mr. Andrews. I don't think we need a motion on that, and that would go out. If it doesn't, then
Okay.
we'll know about it.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair, and other members, to clear this issue up.
If there isn't any, we'll continue with consent agenda. Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we have as you recall, at town meeting voted to create a board of road commissioners. We advertised the position back, I forget the exact dates, back in July. We have given people over 30 days to put their applications in. And tonight, we have a few of those people here with us to be interviewed by the Board of Selectmen. Is Sarah Forrest here, please? Mrs. Forrest, would you come forward? Don't be nervous. If you could sit here and just make sure that little green light is on. Speak very close into the microphone. This is Sarah Forrest. She lives here in Wareham, and she has applied for a position on the Board of Road Commissioners. Now, to remind everyone, Chief Stanley will be the one of the ex officio members. Mr. Charbonneau, the town planner, is an ex officio member, and Mr. Mark Gifford, who's the director of public maintenance, is also one of the ex officio members. And there are 4 members to this committee that are appointed by us, the Board of Selectmen. So, Mrs. Forrest, if you could tell us who you are and why you're interested in becoming a road commissioner here in Wareham.
My name's Sarah Forrest, and I've lived in Onset as a kid during the summers my whole life. I now moved to Wareham 6 years ago. I own a business on Main Street, and I love this town, and I think that there's a lot to be done to our roads that could help bring a lot of people back to Onset Beach and back to Wareham and get Cranberry Highway back up to where it used to be when I was a kid. And I think the board's a great idea to have that done. And there's a lot of money out there that could help us do it, and I don't think it's being gone after and being used.
Any questions from the board? Mrs. Winslow? Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Forrest, I realize this may seem like a crazy question, but we just had this issue come up last week, and I noted that nowhere on the application does it say anything about this. Are you a citizen of the United States and registered to vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mrs. Begley?
Hi, Mrs. Forrest. How are you?
Hi.
It says you worked in the construction field for 10 years. In what capacity?
I used to run a service department for an HVAC company. I've done fire protection, and for the last 8 years I've run service for an electrical contracting company that does only industrial roads and commercial work.
Do any of the companies that you used to work for currently do business in Wareham?
No.
Thanks.
Mr. Holmes?
You look very familiar. Did you serve on it says here none. Did you serve on other boards?
No. I own the pawn shop on Main Street. Yeah, you were on the board when we came for our license. We're actually up for a...
Somehow the wheels are turning, but I'm thinking historic or environmental. No. Okay.
Nope.
Thank you very much. I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
There are any other questions? Thank you very much for applying. We appreciate your interest in being on the road commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Ms. Karen Finnegan here? Karen, please come on up. Thank you. If you would have a seat there, speak right into that microphone, and tell us why. Tell us why you're interested and why you should be on the Board of Road Commissioners here for Wareham. Thank you.
Well, I live in the town of Onset. I've been living there for 6 years, full-time. And I noticed that there's a lot of issues with parking, road conditions, and traffic. And so when I saw the advertisement in the Boston Globe, I thought it's a good chance to sit on a committee. So I'm here with some interest to help change the way traffic flows in Onset and Wareham.
Mrs. Begley?
I think Mrs. Winslow had her hand up
She
first.
has-
I need a bell.
No, you don't. 'Cause we were switching side to the side, so I figured we gave you twice. We'll give her a chance. But go ahead, Mrs.
Thank you. Are you a U.S. citizen and eligible to register to vote?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
My turn?
Next.
Thank you so much for coming forward to volunteer your time with this. Now, have you had any experience in the construction field?
No.
And do you have anybody in your immediate family that does construction on roads in the town
No.
of Wareham now? Because it's interesting that you kind of have a diverse resume.
I know.
You're a small business owner, you have entrepreneurial experience, and you're a registered nurse, so you
Mhm.
kind of do it all. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
What? Mr. Holmes?
I know. Do you work in the local? Are you still an active?
I'm an
is
active
that
nurse.
The right
Mhm.
word for it? Active nurse. Practicing.
I take care of low-income seniors, mostly in the Brockton area.
How you do?
Mhm.
Very nice. Well, thank you very much.
And I want to thank you again, and I'm looking over here, and I'm interested in smiling when I see special training and qualifications. You got common sense and motivation.
Mhm.
I think that's a great asset for anybody, especially that motivation and common sense, because it takes a lot of
Thank you.
time to get the common sense. Thank you very much for volunteering.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thank you for the interview.
Thank you. Mr. John English, are you here?
There's no show.
Joseph Cardoza? Joe, are you here?
Good evening. My name is Joseph J. Cardoza. I've been a lifelong resident of Wareham for 65 years. I've been in the construction field for 45 years, all phases and just about every part of Massachusetts. I've been to construction school. I've been to bituminous concrete school classes, and I've did all type of construction, you name it. I've just about did it, from building the roads to sewer to water and tennis courts and everything like that.
Go ahead, Mrs. Winslow.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thank
Are
you.
you enjoying the show?
A little bit.
Good. I just want to know if you're a U.S. citizen and eligible to register to vote.
I have it. I have it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bagley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Mr. Cardoza.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
45 years in the road building industry.
Yes.
Was it here in Wareham?
I did work here in Wareham.
Mm-hmm.
I did work here in Wareham. Kate, for the last 30 years, I've been more or less in Cape Cod area, which I thought was no area to work, but that's where the gold mine was. You know, I was, you know, my first 15 years I worked like, I worked out of Rainham and Quincy, and we went to all different points. And my first construction job was on 25 years ago. So I'm telling you my age.
Oh, so you were able to retire because you hit the gold mine on the
Yes,
Cape.
I retired because it's a different generation now, you know. So that's why I retired, and I says I would. I've been home for almost 2 years, and I've seen a lot of things, you know, on the road that need to be done. I've been to the office a couple times, and Mr. Andrews have, you know, it's took time, but it's been done, you know. I think I've been to his office twice about Depot Street, and they finally fixed it, you know, and that railroad track. And so, amen
Yeah.
to that.
Good job.
Yeah. And we had another problem there on, there's another thing we have. You know, this town's a growing town, and I see it. I don't want to get into it now. I'm in interview. But it's something the town should do. You people come over here looking for permits, for gravel permits and things. They got these trucks running these roads, and I told Mr. Andrews, they're way over tonnage, and we are picking up the bills. And it bothers me because I can see it. And I know those trailers are supposed to carry 28 tons. They're carrying 35, 40 tons. And if they get in the accident, boom. We have those trucks going down to, I'm not trying to put a mark on myself. We have those tractor trailers going down to Cemetery Road. What's the name of that road? Tyonet Road. Right? It took me a year, just about a year, to get the basin fixed, because those roads weren't built for these type of equipment. You know, and it's something that the town should get access of so much a tonnage when they're moving their gravel or something like that. And just like myself, I had my pickup truck, the front end, done 2 years ago. And I've been home here 2 years, and I had just had to have it done again because these roads are so bad. You go from Shangri-La, those people must be having trouble. And you get those trailers running there. I mean, I'm just bringing out a few things that, you know, I know the money's not there, but a lot of these people should be paying for their services.
I just have another question, Mr. Cardozo. It sounds like you've really been, you're an expert, you've done road work, and you know the condition of our roads. Do you currently work on any kind of road reconstruction in Wareham, or does any immediate family member?
No. No.
But thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Holmes? Okay, Mr. Cardozo, you've been in the field a long time now. What positions have you held? And could you name a couple of the companies? Because I know you've been in some big companies.
In 45 years, I've only worked for 3 companies. I worked for Campanella and Cardi, and that was years ago. And they changed to Campanella Corporation, you know, bought out. And then I worked for Old Colony Crushed Stone, and the Arabs bought them out for the land. And then I worked a few months there for B.A. Simeone, and the rest of the time I worked for
That's all right.
No.
Lawrence
Lynch.
Lawrence Lynch. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Cardozo, for volunteering and stepping up.
I just want to thank you for bringing up the condition of the roads in Shangri-La.
Well, it is. It's a shame. And there's one culprit there that should be paying. And I don't want to mention no names.
Please,
you know,
please don't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's one culprit there. And
Please don't do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Okay.
Cardozo.
Mr. Williamson, Peter?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Pete Williamson. I live up on Pond Edge Trail. My wife and I just
You want to
moved.
speak up a little louder in the mic?
Right into that, Peter, if you would.
My wife and I just moved into town in February. I submitted an application. I submitted a resume. I have a long history of construction. Built anything from roads to treatment plants to developments. I worked on the Central Artery Tunnel for 15 years, and presently we're building the development up in Somerville, Assembly Square Drive. I have a lot of contacts in the industry. I think I could bring a lot to the table for the town of Wareham in this position.
Mr. Oh, you want to relinquish?
Yeah, first we want to know if he lives here.
It's the $1,000,000 question.
The answer is yes.
You a U.S. citizen and eligible to vote?
I am.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Begley.
I just thought I'd wait. Hi, Mr. Williamson. You just came full-time since February, is that what you said?
That's right. We
And you've already
moved to
applied
Wareham.
to volunteer for the town on
Well,
a few?
I came in about a month ago and saw you folks. I wanted to volunteer for a position. You put me on the Conservation Commission. This opening came up, and to be frank with you, this is right up my alley. I can bring a lot to the town here, and you know, I would be willing to relinquish that position and take on this responsibility.
For those that may not remember, we appointed, this board appointed Mr. Williamson to the Conservation Commission as an associate member. You have a 3-page resume here, but my question is the same pretty much as to the other applicants.
Sure.
Do you currently are you currently involved in any kind of road construction in the town of Wareham?
No, we are not.
And
that
would your
doesn't-
company, would that happen with the company that you work for?
We do a lot of public bidding. We do a lot of public work, and we do a lot of private work. If there was an opportunity that came up in Wareham, I would certainly bid the work. And right now, we're looking at a Mass Highway bridge that's supposedly coming out in the near future. And you know, I'm going to sit here and tell you I'll bid the work because I need to get the work.
I understand,
Yeah,
but you can understand my
Oh,
concern
absolutely.
that that would
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
conflict
And-
because
and,
you would be privy to information that other bidders
Right.
would not be.
And I wouldn't want to, you know, I wouldn't want to compromise anybody on that. And you know, I can't sit here in front of you and tell you I won't bid work in Wareham.
I understand.
yeah.
My husband was in construction for years and retired, and it's fortunate that he's retired because I don't think it's ever been this bad. So I understand that, and I
Right.
appreciate your
Mhm.
candor.
Most of our work is in the Boston area. You know, we do a lot of bridge work. We do a lot of site work within Boston. I usually don't travel down here, although I do have one job in Falmouth that's running and completing in the next couple of months, but that's our history.
But we're kind of looking at a major reconstruction of Cranberry Highway
Mhm.
in East Wareham,
Right.
and hopefully looking at, you know, this board to obtain funding
Mhm.
to really look at the roads in Wareham and have a board that can just concentrate on, because they
Right.
are people that no one disagrees that they're in horrific shape.
Mhm. Mhm.
But again, I appreciate your candor saying that you would definitely bid on this
Yeah,
job.
and you know, I will be frank with you. We are not road builders. You know, we take on site jobs and things like that. We don't compete with Lawrence Lynch or the aggregates. You know, we build bridges, but you know, I don't get into the habit of building straight road jobs. So, you know, I would, if the board could see where they might consider my appointment. I don't know if there's something we can work out there, but I think, you know, my wife and I moved here to stay here, and I plan on, you know, retiring down here, and you know, this is a good opportunity for not only myself but the town of Wareham to draw on my experience and my history in this field.
I
And,
understand.
you know, I'd be willing to put that forward, but I understand what you're saying, and I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Holmes?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a good. I probably should have read this in the beginning because I was just a little stunned. To be very clear on the powers and duties of these road commissioners is to make rules and orders for traffic policies, including speed limits, traffic control signs, regulation of heavy commercial vehicles, traffic and parking regulations, penalties and repeals. Insofar as these rules and orders are the same as the regulation, rules, and orders now in force in the Wareham Municipal Traffic Code, they shall be deemed to be a continuation thereof. And it says the board shall furthermore assume the responsibility of street marking and house numbering. No, and
No,
funding and any of that sort of stuff, Mrs. Begley. I didn't recall that. That's why I jumped up a
And
little bit.
I had read that also.
And most of those issues are still under the realm of responsibility of the Board of Selectmen and Town Administration, Mr. Gifford. So, okay. Oh, and I had one other point. It just came back to me. You were appointed correctly as the Conservation Committee as an associate member.
Yes, sir.
And let's just be very clear, Mr. Williamson. You don't have, if you are fortunate to be selected on the road commissioners, you don't need to give that up.
No, that's fine.
You
I
don't
just,
need to
you know,
relinquish that. He made a mention of that.
I just want to make sure that I can devote my time to
Right.
what
Right, okay.
I'm appointed to.
Because we need help, and I'm glad you're volunteering, but you don't need to relinquish this to be on a road the road commission.
That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, two quick things. It may help all of us feel a little bit better if Mr. Williamson could work with Mr. Andrews to contact the Ethics Commission with the duties of the road commissioners, and Mr. Andrews can assist. They have what they call a lawyer of the day.
Yes.
So it depends on what day you call, what opinion. No, I'm just kidding. So if you could do that, and then I would prefer not to vote on these appointments until we're absolutely sure there won't be anything to, because I'm very impressed with your qualifications, but Mrs. Begley does bring up a very valid point, and I want to make sure that we're good. So if they can work that out in the next couple weeks. The other thing I need to do is I need to make a motion to go beyond the hour 10, but when I make this motion, I just need to let everybody know that I need to leave by 10:30 tonight, so whether we're done or not, I have to go, so I apologize.
Motion to go till 10:30.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I would suggest then that there are some other persons on your list. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Williams.
That's
Thank
fine.
you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
He likes it. He's on TV.
Now, Mr. Holmes, what is your
yeah, I think
what
you
is
know.
your pleasure with this?
Oh, what I would do is I agree that there's some other occupations on the other candidates. If we could just run these through real quick, Mr. Andrews, to make sure they're okay, then we'll bring them up and we'll vote at our next meeting, which is
6th.
September 6th.
Because we did make a commitment to the public that we would have this board in place in September. Does that give you enough time, Mr. Andrews, to check 4 people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to make sure that, I think there's only 2 in here, 3 with construction background, and make sure it's clear that they could serve as road commissioners.
I'm happy to do that, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right.
Yeah.
And if we could get that back by the 6th, for the 6th, we'll have it on our appointment. So we get it done?
Mr. Chair?
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Mr. Winslow?
Could we also see if the gentleman who left can come back, because we did run rather unusually late tonight, so we can get a chance to talk with him?
If we're going to meet if we're voting at the next.
Well, we've interviewed and voted.
Right.
Maybe we could just get him earlier on the agenda. We did just have an unusual amount of stuff kind of before this tonight, so.
Mr. Holmes, since you're in charge of the committees.
You're
what's
the
your
committees
pleasure?
are, Mr. Holmes.
I'm going to put it on Mr. Holmes.
Yeah. The other folks waited and
Yeah,
lost the
I
gentleman
think,
that,
you know, you make a valid point on that. So, anyways, so we're going to get an answer back on the 6th,
yeah, if we could just get that, Mr.
and then
Andrews,
we'll
real
vote on
quick.
it on the meeting of the 6th of September.
And then once we do that, my plan would be, the next step would be to get a letter off to Chief Stanley and let him know that we've appointed 4 people, and then he can start assemble his. Because I know it said he was an ex officio member, but I think he was actually considered the chair, wasn't he? in
No.
charge of that?
I think once we appoint it, then they'll
No.
know.
We'll get to
That-
that point after
yeah.
the next meeting.
And Mr. Holmes, can you?
And then I have.
Can you take over a minute? 5 minutes, I'll be gone.
Oh, okay. Well, we need to have a clerk, I guess, for the next 5 minutes. Is the chairman, is Martha still here? Or did she leave?
Yeah.
Okay. The next up on the list is the appointment. We've had several moves on the Council on Aging. Oh, Mrs. Winslow.
I need a bell.
A what?
A bell. I have a question on this next appointment before we call anybody up to the table.
Yes.
Was this an advertised vacancy?
We have an opening. It was a resignation on the Council on Aging.
Correct.
at the time of the resignation, we have an associate member.
Right.
And it's been past practice in the town, and when we have an opening, that the associate member, based on the vote of the committee, would be moved into a full membership position. So I actually thought it was the other lady, but I got it. Well, I won't say that. I got it backwards. But this is correct. Martha is here just to verify that for me, right? Yes. So this lady's been serving as an associate member. I actually thought we'd have a second one, but and so now we have it. We do have an opening under the new Council on Aging guidelines of 9 and 2, and so I'd make a motion that we appoint Lynn Burrows as a full member to the Council on Aging.
Second.
Oh wait, I can't make a motion as the appointment guy if I'm sitting here as the chair.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I move that we appoint Lynn Burrows as a full member of the Council on Aging for a term to expire no later than, where is it? June 30th, 2013.
Second for discussion.
Second discussion, Mrs.
Yes.
Winslow?
Is 2013 the end date of the vacated term?
Yes, it is.
So we just appointed this person that resigned?
It was the end.
The end of her term. The person that resigned, his term expires
June 30th.
2013.
Oh.
So it's to finish the term.
She, yeah, she left.
Okay. So, just so I'm clear on this, when we have a board that has full members and associate members, we don't advertise the full board member opening. The associate members graduate on a recommendation by the board or committee to that full board member, and then we fill the associate member.
I don't think that's true, Mr. Holmes. I think that it's not been consistent. Absolutely, I agree with you. However, in this instance, I don't recall how many associate. I don't remember how the article went that passed about Council on Aging. How many full-time members and how many associate members are supposed to be on that board?
We went from 11 full-time members, and following the vote of town meeting, we went to 9 full-time members and 2 associate members. Mrs. Burrows was appointed by the previous board as an associate member, and this vacancy is actually for Mrs. Fleet, who is leaving, who has resigned and is leaving the area. She was just reappointed.
So if Mrs. Burrows is appointed as a full member, that would leave 2 associate positions available on Council on Aging.
Which is correct. And we have one member, and that's what I was trying to get a hold of you. We do have a member who attends every meeting, who's been interviewed by this board and your board, and we do have a letter of recommendation for Kathy
Moore-Minkle.
Moore-Minkle. Right, and so they'll bring that up next month, because the recommendation, I believe, will be to make Kathy from a regular attendee to an associate.
So the Council on Aging is asking us, this is their recommendation,
That's correct.
that this particular member as an associate be made a full-time member.
Correct.
And they'd rather that we wait till the next time that we appoint for the associate member. Is that correct?
Right, because I hadn't thought of that after, but they haven't voted They voted for her, really, because we had but there was no positions open at that time.
So the committee, they've had this person that has been attending. And the
Correct.
committee currently voted and is recommending Mrs. Burrows.
That's correct. That's correct. Now, you mentioned consistency, if I may. I happen to believe this is how it should work. That if you have associate members and they've attended the meetings regularly, and they're in discussions at the board meetings and participating, and they're putting their time in to learn the board and learn what's going on and active participation. If a membership comes open, then that senior person, in this case, Mrs. Burrows, should be appointed to the board. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Chair, I agree with you. And the reason that I question this is because since I've been on the board, that's how it's always been done with the boards that have associates, which I believe is only one. We've always taken the recommendation of the board to bring the associates up when there's been a vacancy. However, I did receive an unexpected visit on Sunday regarding another
But this-
committee, and I want to be certain.
Mrs. Winslow, could we stick to the Council on Aging, please?
But that's why I'm asking this question, because I don't want to be sitting here 2 weeks from now and being told that a different standard applies. So,
Oh, no, Ms. Winslow, I think that Mrs. Burrows has proven herself to be
Mrs.
team
Begley, that's your
player.
opinion. I'm not
Yep,
talking about
absolutely.
Mrs. Burrows. I'm talking about how we appoint to full positions. I'm not going to do it one way for one board and another way for another board. So I'm just asking my colleagues how they intend to handle this, because I'm not casting, I'm going to cast my vote based on not just the candidate that's before me, but I want to make sure that I'm being consistent in how I'm doing things. And I'm not going to be taken for a ride a few weeks from now.
Well, I don't know. The extra commentary is necessary. The point is well taken.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Exactly.
I will not rubber stamp anybody's appointment. People will be appointed by merit and by how their conduct, by how cohesive they are, because this town needs to be working cohesively. People need to get along to move forward. And as long as that happens, I'm happy to go by your unwritten policy. But should that not happen, I will not just rubber stamp because someone happens to be an associate and wants to and thinks, oh, I don't even have to apply because it's automatic that I'm going to be a full member. It goes by merit principle as far as I'm concerned.
Then, Mr. Chair, I would respectfully request that we advertise this opening for the full board member. Oh, well. I seconded for discussion.
We're discussing it right now.
And I'm saying that if we're going to change the rules depending upon the person, then I don't feel comfortable voting like that. I think every position is going to need to be advertised, and we should get a broad spectrum of the qualified individuals who may be interested.
Well,
There's a motion on the floor that was seconded, Mr. Holmes.
yes. In my opinion, I received a phone call myself, similar situation, and I went back in time. And although I agree with my opinion, you might find that strange. I do recall back in, and this, I think it relates to this motion. I do recall back in November, I believe it was, where we had an opening, and it was on the Board of Health when Dr. Gleason passed away. And I know in consultation on the previous board, we actually did advertise that position or make it known that it was open. We did. As a matter of fact, all the folks that we just interviewed for the Board of Health, they were actually at that interview process, and they were all asked, if you don't get a full member, would you accept an associate member or something? And we did actually we did do that. do it one way or the other. And I don't know whether Mr. Chairman, you can come back. I'll finish this debate or conversation if you'd like, but I think we do need to do it one way or the other. I'm not opposed to either way. I mean, the board is not going to suffer for another month if we post the job. And no, actually.
Well, since
If I need you, I'll call you. If I need you, I'll call you. But right now, it's not.
Did you want me here just to vote, or you want me to make comment?
Well, I'd like you to comment because you've said to me about this associate thing in the past, and the question now is, Mrs. Burrows. Well, the motion on the floor is to appoint Lynn Burrows from associate member to full membership on the Council on Aging. I have a second on that motion, and we're in the middle of discussion. But the question is, come up that in the past we have re-advertised that position, the full member position, and had people come in and interview. If you recall, even for our cedar appointments, I tried to make the argument that I could turn somebody that applied onto the economic development team, and you said no, that it's a particular position, and whenever a particular position is open, you have to apply. I disagree with that, but that was where you were coming from.
Since I've been on the board, I agree with moving associates up. And I was adamant about that at one time, and I got voted down because, as you mentioned earlier, about the Board of Health. When the Board of Health situation came up, I was ready to move up, but they said no, re-advertise it and go through the whole thing. So once you start that, I think we're going to have to do the whole procedure. The board that you have now, one member being not there doesn't cause anything to the board because you still have full voting members and all that. There's 9 members, so as long as you're only missing one.
Well, now 8.
Right.
We're missing 1.
So as long as you have 5 members, you have a quota.
Mr.
But anyway,
Cruz, please
we've done
don't
it.
have a conversation with the audience.
Excuse me. Right. You're absolutely right. So anyways, my opinion is we did it for the Board of Health, re-advertise it and going out, and I think we should do this same thing, because we do have applications probably on file that's already been filed. And if we didn't pull any of them out, we're doing a disjustice to the people that had applied previous for this one position. So that's my take. So you've made a motion, we had a discussion. Now it's up to, what was the motion? Because I was out.
Yeah, the motion was to appoint, and it was made and seconded. Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, I seconded it for discussion, as I had to. But this was a big concern of mine, and I just want to make sure that we're being fair and consistent to all applicants of all boards. I'm not suggesting that Mrs. Burrows won't be the successful applicant, but if we're going to do it for one board, we need to do it for all boards, and we need to be consistent so that every applicant that comes before us is getting the same treatment. So I would be willing to withdraw my second, advertise the position, and appoint this member, 30 days from now that we normally do?
Would be at our September
6th.
September.
No, it's the September 20 meeting.
September 20th.
The third Tuesday.
Because
we did these tonight because we had the road commissioners.
Technically, if we vote on the appointment and the appointment gets voted down, then she has to reapply.
That's right. So given the sentiment of the board, I will withdraw my motion.
And I'll withdraw my second.
All right, thank you very much for consensus. I would relinquish the chair now.
Reapply, and we'll put it back on the agenda.
No, we didn't vote. We withdrew our motions.
Okay.
I will advertise the position, and we will reconvene on the interview process on September 23rd. While I'm at it, and before we move on, I would also like to say that we do have a position available coming up as a full member of the Board of Health. We also have, I received a letter from the chairman of the library trustees, and we have I believe, 3 positions there and no applications. If you're interested in any of these, the process is very simple. You can go online, wareham.mass, and fill out an application, or you can go by the selectman's office and fill out an application. There is no need to come by my house. There's no need for that. Please go through the process. It was very uncomfortable having people come to my door to apply for a board. So please go to the house. No, Dolores will kill me. Please go to Town Hall or go to the website and apply for boards or commissions, or call me and I'll be happy to explain the process. With that, Mr. Chairman, it's all yours.
If you would continue, I think we need to get on with this.
Sure. There's always more, isn't there? Okay, now we're on to the bills. CDM bills. Mr. Chairman, if we could, let's skip over this and go right to the licenses. And I do it, but that's a cardinal rule that
Okay, if we can do this, because we still need to get this done, so we're going to be here later then.
All right, but let's take care of the licenses and permits if we
Let
could.
these people go home.
The annual airborne, is Tiny here?
No, he isn't.
I believe Tiny was representing that.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the clerk, Mr. Lopes did come by my office, and you have in front of you the application for the item before you, which is a request for the use of Onset Bluffs for
Right.
the annual airborne. Steve?
Hang on one second.
Oh, Steve, that's you.
It was
Here
a
it is
handout.
right here. I'd make a motion that we approve the permit for the use of Onset Bluffs for the annual airborne reunion to be held on September 11th. And this is at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, so I don't see any interference with the 6 p.m.
Second.
Motion made and second for discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 400.
As Captain Dyke is here, I'd make a motion that we approve the application from the Wareham Fire Department for use of town roads to hold a fire truck parade on Sunday, October 16th, 2011, at 11 a.m., beginning at Bessie Park and finishing at the Main Street Fire Station.
Second.
Motion made and second for discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 400.
I make a motion that we approve the application from the Wareham Middle School for use of town roads to hold their annual Readers Become Leaders 5K race walk on Sunday, October 16th, 2011.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
400.
Next, we have an application from the Gateway Gold and Pawn Inc. Could you come up, please? If you could, just briefly. If you wouldn't mind just telling the board what this request is for.
Before we were a DBA under my husband's name, and since the tax man and the lawyers and the accountants like incorporations, it's now a corporation, and the articles state that my husband and I own each equal, I think one 51%, one's 49% shares to the company.
So you're asking, and so you're saying that the business Gateway Gold and Pawn is changing. So the transfer is to change ownership.
Yeah, we held a license under a DBA,
right,
and we've now incorporated. So I guess for paperwork purposes, we need to reinstate a license under the Inc. name.
All right. I'd make a motion we approve the application for a change of type of business ownership from an individual to a corporation for Gateway Gold and Pawn Inc., 298 Main Street, Wareham.
Second for
Motion.
discussion.
Motion made. Second for discussion.
I just have one question. Dominic. Oh, okay. I was just wondering. Okay. No, I wanted to make sure, 'cause I... Okay.
He is no ownership,
No,
no.
then that's fine, but I don't want somebody to think that we just overlooked, so, thank you.
He was here for moral support when they first came before this board, as I recall.
You just came 'cause you like us. Come on.
Any other
I'm good.
questions? If not, motion made.
Just one comment, if I may, since they're here. You know, I remember that night, and I said that I didn't want to see neon signs
We have no neon signs.
flashing. And a good friend of mine is sitting in the audience tonight, and I know she has an issue with signs on streets. And I just want to caution you about some of those things that are out in the front there on the sidewalk. Different things. She knows what I'm talking about. She's smiling. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing no other questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 400.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else, persons waiting?
Mr. Clerk, this gentleman here seems to be...
Yeah. Okay, I'm asking right now. Is there anyone else, person?
Yeah.
Come on up.
Come up.
Mr. Perry from Serpide.
Yeah, if you're looking at your agenda, we're going down to number 11, town business. Ross Perry.
20 minutes, 15 minutes. I know you're running late. Everybody wants to go home. But this is a chance to discuss what we do with the results of the 911 feasibility study. It's been going on for a year and a half. And I would like to think that we'll have time to discuss and deliberate it. If you all want to vote yes for it now, then we can be a lot simpler.
I don't know how many others have been to one of the meetings, but I think I've already been to one, so, but continue.
I've seen this before.
Let me see if I can do this quickly, if that's okay. We started a study about a year and a half ago to look at...
Ross, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, why don't you grab the mic, take that with you?
Sorry.
There you go. No, that's okay, just for the listening audience.
I'm Ross Perry. I'm a municipal management specialist with SERPED, Southeast Regional Planning and Economic Development District. A study that was started about a year and a half ago looked at, does it make sense and will it improve public safety if we consolidate area dispatches? And if we can improve public safety and save money, then it would make sense. The other incentive for this is the state 911 folks would like to reduce their costs because they're bringing services into all of the dispatch centers in this area. If anybody needs a couple extra copies. What the report found was that there's a lot of decentralized dispatching, and especially in the case of Wareham, where you have a primary dispatch and then you hand off calls to a secondary dispatch in your fire department, there's a risk of information being lost. There's a risk of delays. So consolidating dispatch can help solve some of the handoff issues and delay issues. A lot of our dispatch centers are understaffed as far as handling all the calls they might need to handle. But as a region, if we look at all of our dispatch centers, we're actually overstaffed. So it's sort of an awkward situation where the individual towns may not have enough dispatchers, especially if we bring in emergency medical dispatch as a requirement. But if you look at the calls that are handled across the region, we're overstaffed. So trying to sort of skip ahead, the recommendations of the feasibility study is to form a regional administration agency. This will be a way to start coordinating some regional activities. The first they would suggest, and it's a phased approach, would be regional training. This would be a way to get all of dispatches across the region and within your own town up to the same training level. A second option would be to look at a regional trunked radio system so that you can get dispatchers to be able to talk to police and fire and EMS folks across the region. The third option would be a regional CAD system so that you get everybody using the same computer-aided dispatch. This would allow dispatchers to move from one town to the other and sit down at a console and be familiar with the equipment, familiar with the protocols, and able to help out. If you're having an event in your town and you need to bring in a dispatcher from elsewhere, they'd be a drop-in fit because they're already using the same radios, the same CAD, and they've all been trained to the same levels. There's also an issue that's come up on what's called MSAG, Master Street Address Guide, and ALLI, which is Address or Automatic Location Index. It's what you think of as caller ID, but when you call 911, certain information comes up on the console. If the addresses and databases don't match, there's a risk that that person's address may not be located. And actually, there's some comments made in the study that the Wareham public safety folks say that as much as they're working on it, they're not always sure the addresses are right when a call comes in. So if we were to do those steps, any one of those 4 steps, those stand on their own as a worthwhile project. If you got everybody in the region up to the same training, that makes sense. If you do just the radios, that makes sense, or just the CAD, or all 4, it makes sense. If once you've done those 4 projects, you might decide, yes, we actually will save money and improve public safety if we consolidate our dispatch. So I'd love to have you vote tonight to say we're going to do all 4 steps and vote to consolidate dispatch. I'm not seeing a lot of warm and fuzzies on that. The combining of the dispatch, if we had the 19 entities that participated, it would be roughly divided east and west. This is just based on the 19. I'm expecting there will be less than 19 that actually want to move ahead, so we would redraw this and recalculate it based upon the towns that actually move ahead with consolidation. So moving to my last slide, so I've done this in 5 minutes. I think you've got 3 options. You can select any one of the regional, all 4 of the regional activities: training, radio, CAD, and address resolution. You could agree to the full consolidation, which you would do after those have been implemented, or you can say thanks but no thanks. And that basically is in a nutshell. I've tried to go through this really quickly. There's a lot of benefits in doing this. There are some concerns. There's going to be across the region reduction in dispatchers. That's how the money is saved. And there will be some duties that dispatchers have done in police stations that may have to be shifted around. But the study has looked at the public safety aspect of this and feels that net, it's the right move. Okay.
Mr. Perry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am a huge proponent of regionalized dispatching, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to vote for it without seeing where the final lines would be and how that would actually impact our employees, because Wareham is a unique community where almost every one of our dispatchers lives in our community, and we have to think about that too going forward. However, I'm very much interested in the training. I'm very much interested in the radios and the address location. And I just want to tell the public how amazing this is. We were on vacation a couple weeks ago out of town, and we saw a horrific accident, and we were the first ones to come upon the accident. I dialed 911 from my cell phone. I had no idea where I was. And do you know the technology that they had? They pinged they did what they call pinged my phone, which meant I couldn't call it, access anything on it, text anything until they determined my exact location and got the emergency responders there. And all that came up on my phone was emergency response while they were determining it. If they hadn't been able to do that, those people in that vehicle, you know, they needed help. So that was amazing. So I'm very excited about all those things. And I know you really want us to go like full throttle ahead, but I'd like to, for me myself, I'd love to do the first of it and talk about what it's really going to look like after you've been to other communities, so that then we can have a real discussion on what the impacts are, the benefits, the pros and the cons to Wareham itself.
Mr. Bagley.
Thank you for your patience. He came in with me at 5 of 7 or 10 of 7. I guess my question is this: what's the recommendation from the police department, the 2 fire departments, and EMS here in Wareham? What's their input been on this?
All towns, all chiefs have been invited to participate in this, and I've not had comments from the Wareham chiefs. So I would leave that up to you to obtain their comments.
I definitely would want to get input from our emergency responders before we certainly made a decision on something like this.
Mr. Holmes?
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Mrs. Begley. You know, I was kind of looking around here. I didn't realize that the gentleman was looking for a vote, because I would expect to see a letter from a recommendation from Chief Stanley and from the 2 district chiefs, Wareham, and Mr. Evans from the EMS, and the town administrator, quite frankly. This document stresses a savings of operational savings of $203,000 to Wareham, but I'd like to see Mr. Andrews verify that number. So I mean, listen, I have no issue with looking at the program, sir, but I'd like to know what our leaders think, the 2 chiefs, the chief, the director, and for Mr. Andrews to definitively show us where this really is $203,000 in savings annually.
Well, if you're finished, I did go to the meeting, and I didn't see any of our EMS or fire or police at that meeting, but there were quite a few from other towns in the local area, and they all seemed receptive, but they had questions too. So I think it'll be good if we talk to our 3, especially if we're entertaining about putting all our resources in one location. I think it'll be more receptive to us instead of knocking on the door and say, hey, I have a call. So
Well, there's an extensive report on our webpage, 104 pages if you want to read it. I tried to summarize it in about 5 minutes for you tonight. Everybody has a lot of concerns about regionalizing, and the comment that Wareham is unique.
No, it's not. Is that what you're saying? That's okay.
There's 246 unique dispatch centers in Massachusetts. For a reference point, there's 39 in Delaware with roughly the same size population and geography. I'm sure that Delaware, they get 911 service when they call with just 39. I would suggest that since agreeing to regionalize in some model like this is pretty scary, that you agree to look at regionalizing the training or the radios or the CAD or the addresses or all 4 and see how that works. And if it turns out we've accomplished something and working with the other towns actually makes sense, you may decide down the road, yes, we're willing to regionalize and actually move and consolidate our dispatch. When we know the towns that are moving ahead, this would be redrawn, and we could tell you the cost based upon that number, and we'd start looking at locations. Right now we don't have any. We have a rough estimate for construction, but we don't know where, because we don't know who's playing.
Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, just so Mr. Perry understands, the Board of Selectmen is only responsible for the police department. We have no jurisdiction whatsoever over the fire districts.
2 fire districts.
2 fire, that's what I said, districts. They're governed by their own individual prudential committee. You would actually have to probably go to those committees, because they're also elected like us, and make your presentation. Thank you.
10:33. Tired.
Yeah.
Amen.
But what I would really like to do is maybe we can ask Chief Stanley to look this over and register any objections he has to it with us so that we can address those, because it certainly can't hurt to have our dispatchers more highly trained or have better equipment.
In the EMS.
And EMS. I mean, it would just be a nice thing to get their feedback and then try and move forward with it, because it's not much we can, giving them more training is not a bad thing.
Mr. Holmes, did you have any remarks?
No, it's fine.
Mrs. Begley?
It's not a motion, right?
No, it's not a motion.
Not a motion.
I really would like the input,
Absolutely. I am all for regionalization and I think that the town can certainly regionalize other services, and that's the direction I think a lot of municipalities are going to go into. However, I just don't see that it's our purview. It is our purview to vote one way or the other, but it would be foolish and disrespectful not to get the input for the people that provide the 911 service, the emergency responders. But I appreciate your time.
We're trying to wrap up as to who wants to move ahead with any portion of this. I was going to say August, but early September would be good.
Mm-hmm.
If your chief has concerns and would like to share them with me, I could provide answers.
So you'd be the best person to contact?
I can be the front person. I'm not the one to be championing this for your community. I've worked as sort of the project manager for this to help make all these pieces come together. If this makes sense for your community, it makes sense from my perspective that somebody from your side or the public safety side become the champion. And we would then help enable it. But this is not us telling you what's good for you.
Right.
This is us saying, here's an option, and you can do with it as you please.
But as Mrs. Winslow said, through you, Mr. Chair, is we have Onset Fire District, we have Wareham Fire District, so they would make their decisions independent of this. And then Chief Stanley and Mr. Evans.
I mean,
so
I would be
there's like
glad
kind
to
of
meet with the fire districts and answer questions for them or give the same presentation. There's a little bit of a scheduling problem. I'm going in for surgery next week and will probably disappear for a while. But we can work on, if they want to talk, we can find ways to facilitate that.
Yeah, just to be clear, Mr. Perry, we don't have any jurisdiction over them. You would need to
extend that invitation.
It would not be appropriate coming from us because they're elected to a position that's equal to ours within the district.
I think that Mr. Andrews could probably help you with contact information with Chief Anderson
Mr.
and
Chairman,
Chief McDuffie.
You are correct, Selectman Begley. I'm happy to do that, Ross. And the other part that just so the folks understand, this was a grant that you won. Doesn't cost the towns anything to take a look. I have talked to Chief Stanley, and he does have some concerns, but certainly to talk with him and also with our EMS department, we can move that forward to at least a point of understanding. And as far as a pro forma, I haven't seen any numbers from anybody that says there will be any. I know that there are projections in this, but I think to Member Winslow's point, just to standardize some of the equipment, think about how we would be working together as we have, Hurricane Irene making its way up the eastern seaboard, makes a little bit of sense to me. So I think I can facilitate your contact with not only Chief Stanley, but also with the other two fire districts, and we can go from there.
If you can ask Chief Stanley to copy me on his concerns, we can address them and maybe cover one step all at
Sure,
once
but
or
I
two
thought it was
steps.
important to the board here that we had announced this some time ago, and that you had brought this to fruition. And I know members of the force, including once again Walter Career, attended meetings to discuss ways to make some progress here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Could I have a motion to make a motion?
To go
We
beyond.
go till no later than 11 to finish paying the bills.
Motion made to go to 11.
Until we finish paying the bills.
We have bills.
Second.
Yeah, I apologize. I
Second.
do.
That's okay.
All in
really,
favor?
Thank you.
There's nothing
Aye.
that's really burning, I don't
Aye.
think, other
Aye.
than paying
It's
these bills. We gotta get these bills paid.
Okay, yeah, that's the most important right now. Okay, so what's happening on the agenda right now, we're going to go back to the consent agendas, try to get the bills paid off.
No,
No, they were already settled. I don't know what they...
Can you just let them know that there's nothing to discuss?
Mr. LaCava, are you here for a discussion? Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, we just
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, because I don't think we're going to get to that tonight. We're going to do the bills, and since everything was settled last week anyway. Right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Sanborn needs us, the mini entitlement grant, so he can go home.
Peter, do you need...
Do you need us to vote on that? Yeah, and then he can go home. Let's Let's let people go home that
We're-
can.
Yeah, I mean,
We're
and
sending
I
everybody home, it
apologize,
seems like.
You know, the way
Oh, I
this
didn't
was
know.
set up, and we can talk about it, but
Oh, no, you should.
we really, that first part was just out of whack. Peter?
Yeah, this is just a simple housekeeping matter. I discussed the FY11 grant, the new grant that was just awarded last month. The grant agreements, the grant contracts have come. It's basically just a acceptance of the grant and authorizing the chairman to sign the grant agreements, that's all.
Here it is. So the language is right here.
Okay, we need a motion and a...
Here's the language for the motion.
You voted last November to file the grant application, so this is just an acceptance of it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we authorize you to sign the 2 attached copies of the standard contract form found on page 14 for the fiscal year 2011 mini entitlement grant.
Motion made.
Second, sorry.
Motion seconded by Mrs. Begley. Open for discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
300.
Good night, Mr.
Thank you,
Slade.
Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Mr.
that
Chairman,
everybody
is
on
there
the
anybody
agenda?
else waiting to, there's 2 people left. Dave, you got nothing you want to say tonight? You're all set? Okay. If we could move over to pay these bills, and then we can get on with it. Let's see. CDM bills. I have the short version and the long version.
Make sure we're,
Oh,
just to
can
make
we
sure we're
finish
on
the
the same
bills
page. Right.
And then we can go through, I think. Okay. First one is on. What was that? Get nervous after watching those things today. Okay, first, CDM bill. I make a motion that we pay on contract number 2 a partial payment number 13 for work completed from June 1st through June 30th in the, oh wait a minute, in the amount of, hang on, number 13 was
Turn to the second page.
right here.
Got it?
Oh, I think I just had it, Walter.
Okay, yeah, that's it. You have
It's on the front page, right here.
it. On the next page, there are 2.
$716,337.11.
Motion made and second. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 300.
I make a motion that we pay CDM Construction Services a field invoice number 11 for $11,350.62.
Motion made and second. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor? 300.
I make a motion that we pay the CDM for the bill covering the Linwood, Ladd, Tempest Knob, and Parkwood Beach sewers, invoice number 15 for $1,380.39.
Motion made. Motion second. Question? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 300.
I make a motion that we pay CDM for the Construction Services Office, which is invoice number 11 for $10,081.40.
Motion made. Motion second. Question? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
300.
Mr. Chairman, we also have a couple of minutes. Well, Mrs. Winslow.
Question, I'm sorry, about one of the bills. Where did you see that amount, the first amount?
First, it was on the first sheet, and then it's on the third sheet. On the cover sheet.
Or is it number 13, right?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah. Where did you see that? Okay.
And if you
Mine
go-
are in a different order.
Oh,
Okay, right. If you go over to the fourth
Yes, I
page.
see it.
Okay.
I just couldn't find it.
yeah, and it's Usually it's printed on this page and the sentence is out of there.
Out of order.
Nope.
I don't know if we can do these.
Minutes?
Yeah, I got one here from March 1st. This wasn't from the previous board.
So no.
Can Mr. Cruz and I do that?
Yeah, but
I was...
Mrs. Winslow just left.
Winslow left, so you'll have to hold.
So I have to postpone that one. The next one,
Same thing.
same thing. That's a
Which?
postponement.
And the special meeting, there wasn't a quorum, so
No,
there
it
were
was
no
only
minutes
just
to
you and I.
approve.
It was informational, so we can do that one.
Well, there's nothing to approve.
No, it just was a...
No minutes.
There's nothing really to approve,
But it's
Mr.
good to have...
Cruz, and it's unfortunate that we had the conversation and didn't realize that unfortunately, that the cameras weren't rolling when we said it was informational. However, because we opened it the way we customarily do, I think that people misunderstood. However, that said, we did not have a motion to adjourn, and this is just minutes regarding the informational
Well,
meeting. I don't believe they
I
need
think
to be
since it was
approved.
informational, we should keep it on record.
Keep it on record, but
Right.
they don't need to be approved.
Okay.
That's my opinion. Does anybody disagree? Mr. Holmes?
I think since
You
the
don't
two
care?
of us was there, we can
Mr.
just...
Holmes doesn't care. He wasn't there.
No,
Yep.
I wasn't there.
Okay. So we're going to keep it on record, so to let the
So
secretaries
you
know.
can't approve those minutes, the 1st and the 15th. They have to be next time?
Yeah, when I guess Mrs. Winslow was here, then we at least have 3 of the people who were there. The other issue that requires, there are 3 of us left, is the N-Star easement in the back of your packets for 72 Sandwich Road. If this meets your approval, please obtain all signatures and return the 2 original copies of the fully executed instrument to me by August 29th. So today is the 23rd. We have to do
Right.
this tonight.
And tomorrow we have a meeting. It'd be pertinent for us to sign it tonight to make sure myself and whoever's
Well,
going to
it
that
needs to
meeting
be
tomorrow.
notarized.
Right, okay.
Right, and Mary Ann's not here.
Well, she can do it in the morning.
Yeah, but is
She
Mr.
can.
Holmes available?
She's not going to notarize for us.
You're a
sight
notary?
unseen.
Okay, Mr. Andrews,
Mr.
the
Andrews is a
notary, he
notary.
will notarize.
Because there's no fee by the town administrator to perform this duty, or does he get
No, Steve, you
$50?
get off the hook. You're off the hook.
Ask
Yes,
him.
sorry?
You're off the hook this time for the fee.
All right. Then I make a motion that we approve the easement by N-Star for 72 Sandwich Road and authorize the board to sign in the presence of Notary Public, Mr. Andrews.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion second. Hearing no questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 300.
So, we can just sign a single copy?
Yes. Do you have one in your packet?
You're supposed to have one of those little jigs.
Well, he might have it in his office,
Yeah,
but...
if he doesn't have it on his packet. No, look in your packet. No, the big sheet. See if you have it on the bottom. Do we have a motion?
At this point, I would, with all due respect to the town administrator, I don't see anything
Pressing. Is there
that's
anything
really
pressing in your...
nerve binding in his report.
Well,
I make
let's
a motion.
ask him.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Let's
unless he
ask
has an
Mr.
issue.
Andrews if there's anything he wants to share. Yeah, I'm sorry. Now I'm going deaf in this ear, Mr. Holmes.
Nothing pressing, right?
Oh, you mean for you. Okay, I'm talking
Motion,
about
motion to adjourn.
motion made, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.